All right, well,
Yeah.
we might as well start. I don't know who else is going to come, but they'll join us when they can. We're going to continue the process that we have been doing. And Brian, I think since this is your first time, I'll just tell you what we've been doing. The training committee is looking at revising the training policy, at least to bring it up to 2023, what we're doing instead of leaving it at 2009. And then there was one update that there was a lot of questions about that we're trying to maybe correct. And so one example was, can we do a basic training with one person? And our last revision said that we could, and there's been a lot of questions about that. So we're putting, Lynn and I took all of the questions about the training policy, the places where there was disagreement, and we made this list, and we're meeting with faculty who want to be here and want to help to get their opinions about why they want it a particular way. We've been talking in small groups and then coming back and sharing, and we're just getting the information. We're not trying to make a decision today. We're getting the information. We're setting up some options, and we're putting a survey monkey out there. Every time we meet, we've had a survey monkey where we're asking faculty to vote for what they think is best after they've heard everybody's input, because sometimes there's input that people don't know, and it makes good sense when you hear it. It might change your answer as to what you were originally thinking if you could hear everyone else's feedback. So that's why we record these. We ask our faculty to listen. And we've been getting some participation with about, I would say, 20 to 30 people every time we've done this. So this is a little bit smaller of a group than we normally have, but we're going to keep plugging away at this. And hopefully at the end, we'll have a finished product for the interim training policy. And then the actual work can start with us trying to move towards competency-based policy. So what's interesting is people are saying, well, we are a competency-based training program. And that's one thing to say, and it's another thing to demonstrate. And if we have 10 people saying they're doing it in 10 different ways. So we're trying to unify our approach to competency-based training, but that's part B of this process, not part A. We're still in part A. And we've asked Pat Roby to be here as the moderator so that she can keep us on track, because she's really good at that, and make sure, yeah, she's very good, make sure that we are doing the work that we're supposed to be doing. So that being said, do you want to have a look at the first, I'll pull up the sheet of what we're looking at and show you what we're supposed to be looking at today.
Could I say something?
Yeah.
The way we've always worked in Ireland, we have faculty committees, etc., of course, but there's a national executive, and we've always made it very clear it's a national executive who takes decisions. The faculty committee can make suggestions, because otherwise you have a conflict of interest. And one of the reasons we're setting up William Glasser International was, in fact, to avoid conflicts of interest. Faculty could vote for a change of hours, change of money, all sorts of things, but ultimately it's the international board that makes the decision whether or not their instructors, they're representing the members.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
We're doing that, Brian. We're not making changes here. We're having the vote in SurveyMonkey. The training committee is going to write the policy. We're going to present it to the board, and the board will make the final decision. So that's the track that we're planned. That's planned.
Just the other thing, I accidentally went to SurveyMonkey instead of signing on for this, and I saw some questions which it said don't vote on them unless you had been at the other meeting, which I hadn't. But so there was one thing about guidelines versus policy. They're not really exclusive in my mind, but what the international board needs to produce is a policy. Now, it may include guidelines, and it may include exceptions. For example, the minimum number of participants might be 4, but there might be some incredible situation where there's only one person, and in that case they apply for an exception. So the exceptions cover that sort of situation. that would be my thinking on it anyway. But I would hate to see that the whole thing become guidelines, because it's not the sort of organization I want to belong to that just throws out a set of guidelines about courses. Okay.
That makes sense. I hear that. We had a lot of people who wanted it to say guidelines. And then there were other people who wanted it to say policies. So
Yeah.
we need to look at that one. That one is not a definite, we haven't settled on that.
Yeah.
But it seems like when we do policies, we talked about our policies would be the standard, but if you wanted to go above the policy, you could, you just couldn't go below.
Mm.
And we've found, at least over the years, and this would be another question, which we haven't actually asked, is what happens when faculty don't follow policy or the guidelines, whatever it's called, because we have that. We have that, you know, we do. And it's not everybody. Of course, most people do follow the guidelines, and there are people who don't, and there's no, you know, there's nothing that happens when they don't. So that's part of what we need to figure out as an organization. Do we do anything about that? So, yeah. Thank you for
punish them.
Yeah, let's hurt them. I know. It's like we're kind of in a quandary about that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, number 10 is where we start, because we've done the others. And Brian, it's not that you can't vote on SurveyMonkey. We just want you to listen to the recording first. That's all. So
Sure. Yeah.
If you do that, then please vote. But we want everybody to have the information before they say what their ideas are.
Yeah.
So the first thing we wanted to talk about is, should the basic and advanced training intensive ever be combined together? We have had situations where this happens. We have some faculty who do that. I know our numbers are dwindling, so it seems to be more appealing to mix them together. Some mix them together for the instruction part and then pull them apart for role plays. But that's the thing that we're trying to find out. I know when I started as the executive director, Linda Harshman said, don't ever have basic and advanced training together. That was one of the things that she said to me, was very clear. And so we wanted to talk about that. And I think the training committee definitely has a leaning on this, but we wanted to hear from everybody before we made a unilateral decision on that. So this is one that we might be able to say yes or no just in the chat. If everybody agrees, we can go on to the next one. But if there is disagreement, we can just have a chat in a small group and see what people think. Or we're small enough, we could just do it here. What do you think, Lynn?
I think we could do it here.
Yeah.
The goal is more understanding, and it's a small enough group that, you know, we
think
can
so, too.
certainly share. Well,
Okay, so I was just going to hand it over to Pat. So go ahead, Lynn.
Nope, good. Go ahead, Pat.
Okay, well, when you say hand it over to me, I'm not sure. Usually what we do is break into small groups right now, and then people talk. So basically the discussion is open to address, or were you going to put this in a chat before we even begin, Kim? Or vote, yes or no?
We could do that, or we could just say what we think. We could just facilitate a small group discussion, and then we can move on.
Okay, so do we want to put a timeline? We've usually got a maximum of 10 minutes to discuss a certain question. Do you want to stay in
that'd be
that
fun.
format? Okay.
Sure. I can set my timer if that would help you.
Sure, I have one also. Okay, so let the discussion begin. I have to say that I have a question about even how to think about this, just for a yes or no perspective. So should the basic and advanced intensive ever be combined again? Yes, does that mean they can be? And no, they can't be. That's basically what the yes or the no would be, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, so discussion.
When I mentioned this to at a meeting of our Irish faculty, they were totally flabbergasted at the idea. And they were very definite no, very definite. I mean, what message must that convey to the participants if they're getting in both basic and advanced are getting the same instruction? Again, there could be an exception like in Antarctica or something, but no.
I would really agree with Brian on that. I just did an advanced in Singapore, and the whole thrust to me of the advanced is to take it deeper, to look at integration, to look at more complex kinds of situations. When I imagine having had a basic person in there, it would have radically changed the kind of depth and conversation and application. So I think, the purpose is to differentiate the two. As Brian is saying, you can always have exceptions and those can be addressed individually. I think when we try to make a policy that's more flexible, I think it doesn't serve in this kind of area.
That's a point that we discussed too, and we agree that it is a no. We think that people in basic week have different competencies that need to address and are very different when you have an advanced people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would also agree. I once had a person that I trained in basic say to me that she went to an advanced training where basic people were in the same training and she felt like she didn't learn anything new. And I think that is shameful on our part, actually. I think that it should definitely be different, a basic and an advanced. There should, otherwise, it's like we're just taking money for no reason.
I think if I were to offer a slight amendment to that statement, I would take the word ever out.
Yes.
And I think we just need to say, should they be combined? No.
Yeah.
So-
I could see there could be a situation where several faculty working in the same campus, they might have, for example, a session about ethics or a special video of Glasser or something that all would get together for. I would I'd have no problem at all with that. But to actually combine the courses, it sends out the wrong message, and we have to be seen as a serious organizer of courses. I think that's important.
Well, just as a person who is, at least for the moment, sitting as the executive director, we do have a faculty member who's supposed to have permission to teach exactly in that way. And so what do we do with people who have been operating this way for years? They have basic and advanced get exactly the same instruction all morning, and then they break off into different groups for role play in the afternoon. Do we just
Doesn't that
leave
really bring up first of all, permission now is granted by William Glasser International, nobody else. Secondly, we do need some policy about people who don't follow the guidelines. And I would think that we would have a very understanding approach to that to discuss with the individual concerned. And the third point I'd like to make on that is that regular faculty meetings where people are sharing ideas about things is probably the best way to avoid any inconsistencies like that,
I think.
which is what.
Go ahead, Kim.
Well, I was just going to say, which is the reason that we started these faculty development PD days or CE days, depending on whether you're an educator or a counselor. And I would say that this person doesn't come to those. So we just, it's a challenge. It's a challenge.
The issue
I
is
think-
the long-standing.
Yeah,
practice.
I think part of the issue is that in the last, 5 or 6 years, the perception was that individual MOs were looking after their own training. And so some instructors felt they could do whatever they wanted, especially, involved with the MO. And I like what Brian said is WGI being the policymaker and holding people accountable, as opposed to the individual MOs. Because some are bigger than others, some are smaller than others. We all have different needs. And I agree with Kim, it is a struggle. and combining advanced and basic, I think there are exceptions. I have once had a person seeking advanced come with me into basic, but we got together beforehand and had some criteria and some learning outcomes for this person. But there wasn't an opportunity for them ever to get it somewhere else at that point. And that was quite a while ago. I haven't done it recently. So that was an exception. And I agree in principle that they shouldn't be combined.
I think we don't have to talk about it anymore. We're preaching to the choir here.
I'd just like to add that I think what Brian said initially about having policy and then requesting exception makes a lot of sense, as opposed to anybody, no policy or just guidelines. But speaking to what Maureen was talking about, I also think that there's a place for finding a way to work with a group when you have just a small amount of people. So that might be where an exception would come into play. If you need to combine groups to do role play or something like that. And I love Maureen's idea that if you have somebody who's at a different level, to be able to do coaching or instruction on the side to be sure that it's brought up to the right level or at the basic level. So to me, that idea of being able to discuss exceptions with an open mind for what's going on in certain circumstances is really important. So, okay, so we have a new person joining us. Welcome, Marinella. Hope I'm saying your name correctly. Good to see you. And Kim, did you want to do a summary for Marinella? Has she been to our groups before?
Marinella has not been to our training group. Hello, Marinella. How are you? Good to see you. So we are providing a process for faculty to weigh in on an interim faculty policy it's not a faculty policy, it's a training policy for certification, because our last policy was in 2009, and then it was updated slightly. I don't remember when, maybe 2016. And there was some people who were not happy with the updates. So we're trying to involve as many people as possible to get feedback on what you're thinking. So the first thing we spoke about is, should basic and advanced intensive be combined together? And I don't know if you have an opinion on that, Marinella. I can't hear you. Are you muted or your volume down? Doesn't look like you're muted. We can't hear you. Is your mic pushed all the way? Oh, you don't have a headset, so it can't be that. You want to say in the chat?
She could put in the chat.
Yeah.
So I suggest maybe we go ahead with the next question while Marinella gets set up. And then she can always add back to the first question if there's something that you want to add to. So Marinella, if that's okay, wave to us, if that's okay. So, all right. So Kim, do you want to go to question 11?
Yeah, I think that in our current policy, it says that you will give 30 days notice for announcing an upcoming training. And really, that is going to be whatever your MO wants as far as notice goes. But this was about advertising your training on the WGI website. And if you want it on the WGI website, we're thinking 60 days notice would be a better amount than 30 days. So we wanted to know if anybody had any opinion about changing it. As far as advertising on your local website, that would be up to the MO. But if you want to advertise at WGI, we're thinking 60 days would be better. So maybe just a quick question. Does anybody have an objection to that?
Just a clarification, when you say 60 days, you're thinking of the amount of exposure on the website, are you? Because it doesn't take 60 days to put it on a website.
No, right. But it doesn't make sense if it's international to put something on the website just a month ahead of time if someone's going to have to travel there to be a part of it. So yeah, it's for exposure, and is it worth putting it up 30 days ahead of time? Or, we could always put it up if you give it to us 10 days ahead of time, but does it make sense for Denise to use her time to do that if it's only 10 days till the training?
Well,
So,
let's
and again-
suppose a course is organized. Let's suppose a group come to me now and say, I would love to have a course, but we're available in 2 weeks' time. At least this is what happens in Ireland. Do I say no to that course?
No.
Well, would it be an open course, Brian? Where you would want it advertised?
Not normally be a closed course, but even an open course in Ireland, sometimes they're advertised relatively short period of time. I mean, I think when you talk about the 30 days or 60 days, you're talking about advertising on the
Right.
international website,
Yes.
but you're not talking about official registration of a course, no?
No.
Yeah, okay.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. Yeah, this is just a post on the WGI website.
Yeah. I would think that if someone, if they did organize a course 30 days in advance or even 28 days in advance, it's still better to have 28 days publicity than none at all,
Yep.
Mhm.
I think what needs to be put in there then, Kim, is on the WGI website,
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
because we're not
Okay.
trying to dictate what is done in individual countries.
Yeah.
Right.
And hello to Marinella. I am working on an iPad. I can't see you, but muchos abrazos.
I'm just making a note in the chat. Because it will help me make the changes to this. Since this is actually a PDF and I can't modify it, it's on the website, so I can't change it.
So did we come to any conclusion? Because I'm hearing some people were saying, yes, 60 days, but then to Brian's point, I kind of agree with him that anytime you can put it out there, we should put it out there. Because things do happen sometimes at the last moment, and I get what you're saying about people who would have to travel, but that's up to them or not. So I also think it might look very good to have, it's almost like an advertisement for our activity. So people can say, oh, look at all the things that are going on. And I'd hate to stop them because it's within a 60-day framework or something like that. So that's
Yeah.
kind of my opinion on that.
So what makes sense to me is that we write this as a guideline for maximum exposure. Please get your notice to us within 60 days prior to the beginning of training. That's what we can say.
Yeah.
I'm good with that. Okay, so this next one is a little bit more complicated. It's actually a lot more complicated. So our certificates currently say CTRT certified. We have had a request from European Association for Reality Therapy to maybe change that to just say choice theory certified and its many applications. Or we leave it the way it is, CTRT, or we go to CTRT NLM, because I have had some people, even just recently, a woman requested her certificate from when she took training, which was probably more than 20 years ago. And she wanted it to say CTRT LM. And the reason, just to give you the backstory on why the EART was asking about changing our certificates to choice theory instead of CTRT, is because when they got the approval from the European Association for Psychotherapy to run their programs and to have them be listed as evidence-based practice, they're listed as reality therapy certification. So they're running reality therapy certification, which looks much different than our reality therapy certification. So they're concerned that there are places in Europe and around the world where people are getting the 2-year certification from WGI, which is not as robust as their reality therapy certification, and they think that it's confusing. It's a brand issue for them. It's okay that we teach reality therapy. They're not asking us to stop doing that. In fact, we teach the process very differently. They no longer teach procedures that lead to change. They teach external control beliefs. After Leon and Dr. Glasser had many conversations, and Dr. Glasser said, yes, Leon, you completely understand what I'm saying, and this is correct. They went ahead and they call that reality therapy. So that's the question in front of us. Should we change what our certificates say? They're saying that they want to come back and join with us, but they don't think that they can as long as we're issuing reality therapy certification instead of choice theory certification. So that has bigger implications than just the initials that we put on our certificate. So that's the backstory as far as I know it.
I wouldn't think there's any problem for anyone issuing a separate certificate. That I would think that WGI for the moment is issuing a CTRT, like LM or GQS are all part of choice theory, but the original certificate was reality therapy, and then it becomes CTRT. I would think that a member organization, and I know they understand the special situation in mainland Europe, is that they have to deal with the Psychotherapy Association, and they could obviously issue a different certificate saying reality therapy. There's no problem issuing two certificates, surely. One from WGI, one from EART.
I
Well,
think,
I know-
By the way, your remark about them coming back to join us is, to me, sounds a bit scary.
I
Why?
recently,
Did they leave us?
Yes, as a member organization. They're still paying dues for faculty and they consider themselves an affiliate of WGI, but they're not a member organization. They haven't been since 2020. They left in 2020.
Are they in a position to issue any sort of certificates on behalf of CTRT if they're not part of us?
They don't use our certificates, no.
Maureen, did you have a comment?
no, it's not in related to that. Well, it is sort of, I recently had a call from a Canadian that's living in Europe, and she was taking the EART process. She was 2 years in, and she wanted to know if she could take the certification program through us in Canada, because it seemed to be, they switched midstream in what she was doing. She was taking the course online, and then the new instructor came in and they wanted to do it in person. Of course, this person couldn't travel. And we had a long conversation about the differences between the certification process that we're doing and what EART is doing. And it was quite confusing to this person, but she decided to stick the course with EART because I encouraged that, because she was so, well-versed and well ingrained in it. So that's just a piece of information. But in terms of changing the certificate, I like what our certificate says. I teach reality therapy and have from the beginning. So
So I think
But
that
I do think, sorry. Go on.
from an academic perspective, I think it's really important to realize what a certificate is
yes,
versus certification or a program endorsement or whatever. So a certificate says you've completed a course of study.
Yeah.
And so, and we're part of our conversation is talking about competency based. So right now, we don't know, we're really what it says is that we've completed this course of study with the William Glasser International Organization. So my understanding about what they're doing in Croatia and in Europe with the EART is that this is more of an academic kind of program, because it's leading to, if I'm right, Kim, it's leading to some sort of degree or some sort of acknowledgement.
psychology degree. Yeah.
Thank you. And so in that case, what they have to do has to be aligned with that particular program. So given that, I would say that what Brian is suggesting is that we have our own certificate if we agree that they're teaching at least to what we're teaching, and then adding to. And then the question is there a conflict of content from what they're teaching to what we're expecting them to teach? So that's kind of another thing to look at. If we're saying, okay, this is fine, we're going to let you do our certificate and you can also do your own. So we need to be sure that there's some sort of consistency in what we're looking at as far as what we're endorsing that they've done.
And also, I mean, if they have left us, they have left us. They don't have a say in what we're talking about here. I mean, if they want to have a say in what we're talking about here, they need to rejoin. I'm very frustrated, and a lot of people are very frustrated with what's going on. And by the way, it's not Europe. It's only the European Association of Reality Therapy. I'm a European, and I live in Europe, and I'm a member of the European Union. And what some people are doing is very different. I get requests from people who are being involved in that system, and they're saying, is this true what they're saying? For example, that reality therapy is not intended to help the clients. There are different things that different beliefs they're coming out with, which is rather awkward. They're rather awkward.
So that's my concern. Is it a different program?
Yeah.
You know, does it align with what we're doing? And so
Yeah.
it's not necessarily up to us to judge that, but just to think about, well, where do we stand and what does it mean to get our certificate?
Yeah.
I didn't
The program
realize
actually
that-
is a very good one.
Yeah.
You know, it is a good program, and it's a very good purpose to get into the psychotherapy realm. Yeah.
Maureen?
And that was the discussion with this woman that contacted me, you know, in terms of what she wanted in the end. And, but I had no idea they weren't affiliated with us at that time either. So,
Well, they
conversation
are
might have been a little-
affiliated, but they're not a member organization.
and not a member.
so,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it, you know, just
So,
interesting.
so given that, taking them out of the discussion, because the question is, what should our certificates say? And so that's kind
They
of,
are a part of the discussion in the sense that we wouldn't even have this question up if it wasn't for the EART saying they would like to come back to us, but they can't come back if we're offering reality therapy certification and they're offering reality therapy certification, and they're two completely different things. So we tried to find another name, and I feel like if anybody changes the name, it should be them, because
Yes.
we were doing
Yeah.
reality therapy before they were. And it means the whole world would have to change just for what they're doing. But their comeback was, we are approved to do reality therapy. So if we change the name, we have to go through the whole approval process again, and that was onerous, and they're not going to do that. So it's just raised as a question. And if we don't want to change it, that's fine. It just means we're going to continue on the path without the European Association for Reality Therapy being a member of us. That's all that means.
Well,
Because they
and
don't. Go ahead,
ahead,
Lynn,
Lynn.
sorry.
Lynn?
And I think if I'm understanding it correctly, Kim, that there's a historical piece of them getting the credentialing. And I don't know whether, with the fact that they have now got the credentialing, whether it opens up a little bit of capacity to, you know, find a way to complement what we're doing and so on. To me, if, you know, we can look at how to be inclusive, that's really very valuable. So it's good just for people in this discussion to hear the history and the why. But I would certainly agree that I don't think it's appropriate for us to even consider taking reality therapy out of. I would also vote for keeping lead management in, even though that maybe perhaps hasn't been our strongest suit for some faculty. But as we expand globally, we're absolutely wanting to reach out into business, and lead management is relevant to so many other contexts, not just business. So for what it's worth, my vote would be to keep all three in.
But then, Lynn, you'd be leaving out quality schools. And we're back to, you know, RTCQ, that long thing that nobody ever remembered.
Remember when we were the Institute
Yeah.
for Choice Theory, Reality Therapy, Lead Management, and Quality Schools?
Right.
Well, I didn't think quality
But
schools
doesn't
was a
lead
part of
management-
that either.
So are
Yeah,
you
but those-
thinking then just to go with CT and its applications? Because then you go, that's the other solution, is to go generic.
Yeah, choice theory and its many applications, which would be reality therapy for counseling and coaching, lead management for business, classroom quality schools for education.
Yeah.
If I'm a licensed counseling therapist, this is just the question. If I'm a licensed counseling therapist and I go and get the certification, and I say I have a certificate in choice theory and all its applications, I'm wondering what that says.
To me, that leaving that broad way of putting it in, it's just like that could be so many things. So what does
Yeah.
it mean? It means everything or it means nothing.
Yeah.
You know, so
That's right.
that would be my confusion with that particular.
Could I take a different angle on this? That maybe the question is the wrong one about what the certificate should say. At this stage, in the year to 2023, should we not have separate certificates anyway? Should we not have a special certificate for class or quality school people, a special certificate for lead management people, a special one for choice reality therapy people, and maybe some general certificate for choice theory and its applications, which is like a mixture of everything, where you get a little sample of everything?
I think that's a really good question, Brian, because in some ways, if we're going to lean into competency, I think that puts a much higher onus on the skill level. And unless you narrow that, you're going to have trouble with people having the competencies, depending on what their background is. Kindergarten teachers are not going to do well with, reality therapy in more depth, unfamiliar clients and so on. It's not as easy.
Yeah.
But if we move to a general base certificate and also have areas of specialty, many people have talked about that as advantageous. And then you could have more depth, and we know what we're getting. We sign up to get an area of specialty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the program would be different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be the thing, is that then we would have to look at it from a curriculum perspective. What could you expect to get in
Exactly.
each one of those kind of tracks to make that work? So,
And if you talk, I'm sorry, Pat, I thought you were done.
no, go.
If you talk to marketing people, they will tell you that just what you said, Pat, if you try to market to everyone, you're marketing to no one.
Yeah.
So if we have specific programs and we talk about Glasser Quality School Program for educators and lead management program for business folks and reality therapy for counselors, it will be much easier to market.
Yeah.
I think we already have done some work on the quality school, and the idea that the old certification model of a basic week, advanced basic practicum, advanced week, advanced practicum certification, that's fine for reality therapy, but that model doesn't fit schools so well, and the model for management was probably be different as well. And so we're not only creating a different certificate, we're creating a different curriculum and a different approach to match the needs of each of our audiences.
So are you saying there would no longer be an eclectic group?
We, as a group, we will be enriched because we'll have specialists, we will have people, but the idea of one person teaching in Ireland, for example, for someone who's never been in a classroom to go in and try to teach anything about a Glasser Quality School, they just would be laughed at, and in America, you accept people's capacities much better than we do. We expect experience,
What I'm thinking is, I'll just tell you, at our university, we have a master's degree in counseling, and then we have sequences. So we have a sequence in clinical mental health, marriage, couple, and family, school counseling, and addictions counseling. So we have all those subspecialties. So we might think about at some point having a certificate in choice theory with a specialization with a focus on, or something like that, so that it was
Yeah.
And so that way, the people in Croatia, or I'm sorry, EART, we say it correctly, they could have a certificate in choice theory, specialization, reality therapy, something like
Yes,
that.
yeah. It
Yeah.
could, in fact, Pat, it could be, we could have, say, the basic week or basic course could be general, that's introducing, choice theory, reality therapy and applications. And then in practicum, they specialize. And at the end, they
That would
get
make
the
sense.
certificate for their specialization,
That would
Um,
make sense for me.
Me too.
That
A
maybe
general-
that those structures are for another day in another group or something, but I think maybe that is what we should be addressing instead of what we do on, if we cling to the model, the old certification model, we're getting stuck on the concrete,
Right.
So
And
we've been, Kim, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, we are just trying to revise the old concrete for now, but
Yeah.
what we're talking about here is what would go into that conversation on competency-based training and speaking to the target markets that we're trying to attract more specifically. So that would be part of that conversation, I believe.
So right now, the question on the table, and we've talked about 15 minutes on this, should the certificate given at certification say just CT or CTRT or CTRT-LM? I don't think that we've come to an answer on this. Do you hope to have an answer, Kim?
No, we're going to put this on the Survey Monkey. We're not looking for an answer today, just to hear the conversation.
Okay, so have we had enough time with this? Are we ready to move
Yeah.
forward?
Yeah,
Sorry, may I just make a comment, please?
of course.
Glad to
It
have you on
seemed-
board.
Thank you. Sorry about the difficulties. I wanted
Hey,
to
Maya.
say that thank you. The point on we have Europe actually claiming that they actually teach reality therapy, but it's different. And I wondered whether instead of trying to get them to change, which looks like they're not open to that suggestion, do we actually expand the name for reality therapy by saying it's Glasser originated, or I know this sounds complicated, but it's trying
I
to
like
make
it.
quite sure differentiated.
Well,
I don't-
Marianella, I like that thought, and I think that the European Association for Reality Therapy would definitely say they're teaching Glasser. It was when Glasser came out with the book Counseling with Choice Theory that Leon had a lot of questions. Leon was the person who founded European Association for Reality Therapy, I think, unless Brian, you did. I always thought it was
No.
Leon.
Leon, yeah.
Okay, and so he spent a lot of time talking to Glasser by phone to find out exactly what he meant by that. And I know that there's been a lot of people who say you can't counsel with the theory. That's a terrible name. And maybe it was a terrible name, but there was thinking behind it. Glasser was not near the end of his life advocating that we continue to use these procedures that lead to change. He was saying we need to uncover the external control beliefs that people have so that they can change their beliefs. And it's a different process, but they would argue that it's definitely Glasser, came from Glasser. So it's almost like it's almost like we're teaching Glasser 1.0 and they're teaching Glasser 2.0, something like that.
Yeah.
But I don't think we could say that on our certificate. I don't think that would satisfy them or us. So
Yeah.
I think like we are the only body. William Glasser International is the only body that can certify in reality therapy. If the EART have separated from WGI, they are no longer qualified to issue a certificate in reality therapy. I think we need to take a stand on that and do it diplomatically and so on, but take it strong. The other thing, and I would like to say, and I'm trying the broader vision, standing back from the immediate discussion. One of the problems is that William Glasser International has not emailed all of its members constantly, and therefore it's a bit like Putin's Russia. In Putin's Russia, the Russians only hear what Putin wants them to hear. And I'm not implying that anywhere else is like Putin. God forgive, that's not possible. But if one person controls the communication, one person controls the communication, and it should be WGI sending to all these people. And I think that is a lot of people don't realize that a lot of people in Bosnia, Croatia, Slovenia don't realize that what they are getting is a totally different thing from what the rest of the world is getting.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I don't think they do know.
Now,
Based on my conversation, I agree with that too.
Yeah.
based on
May I
a lot of
Yeah.
exchanges, I agree with it.
May I ask, is it the same for Japan? Have Japan also broken away?
No.
Mm-mm.
I've often wondered.
No, Japan is with us. It's just the communication with Japan is challenging because most of them don't speak English. So we write to Fumiko, who is their current executive director, and she translates and sends it out, but they don't come to these kind of trainings. And the other thing about Japan that's interesting is when we were there in July, the vast majority of the training they do is in business. And almost anyone who is in business in Japan has had choice theory training. It's pretty robust in that country. And it's amazing. They don't have a lot of counselors. They don't have a lot of teachers, but they have a lot of business people. And they've started their own corporation there called Achievement Corp. And they're the ones who run business people through the training. They're not taking our regular WGI training. So what's interesting is, Brian, you say Ireland has a, kind of a Glasser quality school approach. I know that if Sonia were here, I don't know if you are still here, Sonia, because you're not on my first screen, but if Sonia were here, it's so they do in Colombia as well. So it's like when we start to do this and have specific trainings for specific people, we may go to the countries that already have it and look at what they have and maybe just endorse theirs, because Japan works with lead management and we have other countries working with Glasser quality schools, and Europe is working with counseling and psychotherapy. It's pretty interesting.
So just as a point of moving our questions forward, because it seems like we're getting into a really big picture that needs to be discussed further.
Yeah.
So, so Kim, I would suggest we might want to move to the next question if you feel like you've got enough.
Right. And this one just came up because, during COVID, we approved doing our trainings on Zoom. And people are asking if we can continue to do training on Zoom, even though COVID numbers are down and the world has opened up. Can Zoom still be an option for people to take? And I think that's a simple yes or no, or maybe it's not. Maybe you have an interim answer.
I'll speak first if I may. I think it should continue with Zoom. And on that very point, I wondered whether could we in fact make Japan, in the hope that they will actually in some way get their program to be in English, become the lead management sort of qualification center, and South America do another specialized area, instead of each country trying to actually get across each of those specialized.
It would be a WGI program, and we might ask to adopt somebody who's already done it. We might ask to adopt theirs, or at least use theirs as a starting point. We wouldn't be asking MOs to all develop their own.
What we do in Colombia is that we state with choice theory and all the competencies that are in every course, but we almost all of our members are educators, so we take a little bit more of time studying GQS. That's part of it, but we always take care of teaching choice theory and reality therapy and lead management.
So just from my quick answer to the question is, I think yes.
I agree.
Yes.
I agree, but maybe to say ideally person to person is better, but yes, to Zoom.
I've had a whole lot of managers step up because of offering it on Zoom.
Yeah.
And I do 4-hour segments, which is different. And it's a whole lot easier for them to let their staff go for 4 hours a week.
Yeah.
So I've found good success with that.
I think what it does raise is what extra conversations / training do we want to have? Because it's not a seamless transition. And in some areas, role playing is not strong. We know that people do very little role playing in some areas in the basic intensive, and Zoom is going to make it that much easier to do less, in my opinion. So I think for the training committee, that's something to be thinking about.
I kind of
And what-
disagree there because I think that the option to have these small group kind of things that an instructor can actually look into at different times and check in
Yeah.
some ways could make it easier to do more role play and put time on them and so on, and be monitoring them as opposed to
agree.
somebody walking into a room. So,
Yeah, I
That's
think
been
it's
my
just a
experience.
skill. I think that there's some skill and some things that we would want to talk about, that how to make it optimum, how to really use the technology in our
Yeah,
favor.
we're talking about the system. Yeah.
I find that I did my first face-to-face course after COVID just about 2 months ago. And in fact, I couldn't do the first day, and we did the first day on Zoom, and then the other 4 days face-to-face. But what I found the face-to-face is when people were in role play, there were twos and twos. I could see when I was watching 1, 2, I could see what the others were doing, and I could see if they were running out of steam or if they're running into difficulty. I can't do that in Zoom. So that even though Zoom has many, many pluses, it has certain drawbacks as well.
Yeah,
so to that point, I think that your idea of ideally it would be face to face,
Yeah.
could be
Yeah.
also. So with
Yeah.
that caveat.
Yeah. The other, sorry, related to that is the question of expense. How much do you charge people? Because if you have an open week, you pay for a venue, you pay for coffees, you pay for all sorts of things, and that's included in the charge to the client. In a Zoom session, there's no coffee bill, there's no venue bill. There is a Zoom bill, but it's very little in comparison. Should the cost be different?
On the other hand, we save them travel expense, we save them hotels, those.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
my
Okay.
other question, Pat, just before you move on, is do we differentiate between basic and advanced? Because having just done this advanced and they were all counselors, the depth that we went to in person in terms of their own personal learning, the 2 organizers who are also basic instructors agree completely that in person made such a difference for the depth and so on. So I don't know if we want to think about that.
I think we have to experience it a bit more,
Yeah.
because, there's different thoughts on that and how people learn. I think it's still imperative that we create the connection, that people are comfortable and relaxed enough, even on Zoom,
Yeah.
just as we are in person. And I think we have to work a little bit harder at that because we are on Zoom. But
Yeah.
I think you can still reach the depth.
Okay, good. I just raised that as a thought.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank
It's
you.
a good thought. Thank you.
There would be
Okay.
some things as well, like, when I was on Zoom, in recent times, I've learned to say to my participants, please be on camera. Don't leave
Yeah.
unless it's for a short time, because otherwise, people, at the beginning, I saw some sessions where people turned off and you didn't know if they were there or not,
I say the same. You have to be on camera. I have to see you.
Yeah.
I have to certify that you've been in training, and I don't know if you're really there. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
just one thing that I would add to that is if we want to, I know that WGI and Glasser in particular was a swim upstream kind of guy, and I am too. That's why I'm here. But as it relates to being competitive with other training organizations, I think Zoom has to be an option that we provide because there are customers who just won't attend an in-person training. So I think it's important that we do have that option.
So I think we should change the word Zoom to virtual though.
Yeah.
Because a lot
Yeah.
of people
Okay.
use different.
Yeah.
Okay, let me make a note. You're right.
And just as an aside, thinking about the opportunities that we have to promote, especially if we go into a sequence kind of model, to be able to draw people from a lot of different places when we have those areas of specialization.
Yeah.
That could really be a useful thing. I'm thinking about PESI, all of these kind of organizations that are offering these distance certificates and so on, and they make a nice chunk of change, which I think we could all use and of course, quality being the final determinant. Okay, so
We
are
do
ready?
have to recognize a new phenomenon that I like to call Zoomatosis.
Although to Maureen's point, it should be virtual atosis so that we're not advertising on it. Is that the word that you use, virtual?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we call the courses virtual reality therapy.
There we go.
That's something else. That's something else.
And you know what? There's actually something called virtual reality therapy.
Yes.
I attended a conference, a Canadian Counseling Psychological Association conference, and they were advertising virtual reality therapy.
Yeah.
And I went to the session because I wanted to know what they were doing and what they were saying. And I let them know, I said, do you know that reality therapy is trademarked? But it was something totally different. They're using the cameras and they're having people especially for things like agoraphobia and phobias, they're having them walk through the experience in this virtual reality to recover from their.
I thought when you were talking about that, about like going back to the old days when people were popping stuff and they were out of their minds, and so they're in virtual reality.
No, they actually
Pat
have
Roby,
it.
what were you doing in those days?
I had kids in those days, so I wasn't doing those things.
It's pretty fascinating. If you're afraid to walk across the bridge, then they can put you in this reality situation where you actually walk across the bridge.
It's systematic desensitization
Right,
using
it is, yeah.
computers. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's cool. But it's not reality therapy. It's not our
No.
reality therapy.
Yeah.
No.
All right. My timer just went off. Are we ready to move to question 14?
Yes.
Okay, let's go.
So this question comes from a model that is already in place that WGI has approved. We have a model being taught in Canada and a model being taught, actually two being taught in the United States, where it's a hybrid training with the information, if you will, the nuts and bolts of the information being presented with a narrated PowerPoint and some other virtual ways of teaching. And then they have a minimum of 8 hours real-time role play with a certified instructor. So some of it is virtual and some of it is asynchronistic and some of it is synchronistic. And so we just want to know if that is a model that everybody is comfortable with, because we already have it in Canada and the United States. So what do you think of that?
So Kim, I'm confused why we would be reviewing that when it's already been approved by.
Yeah.
I don't know how it got to be on the list either, Lynn, but it's on our list. So should I take it off? Do you want to skip it?
Yeah,
Okay.
I would take it.
Could I just ask you, the previous topic was about whether we could have virtual sessions, a total virtual course. Obviously, a course that's partly virtual and partly real is an improvement, and therefore, in a sense, we don't need to talk about, do we?
Well, Brian, it's a little bit different because when they're getting the information, there's not a live instructor there that they can bounce questions off of. It's just a
It's
narrated
self-
PowerPoint that they go through on their own. And then they come and they
yeah.
have, at least in the United States, we have a faculty member who's assigned to them. That if they have questions, they have a person they can go to get information from, and the faculty member keeps checking in with them. But then there's role play sessions and Q&A sessions where people get together and they practice together with an instructor. So
So number 13, sorry, let me see. Yeah, number 13 we're on. It's not really about Zoom training. It's about automatic training where you say, watch this video, and then if you have questions, come and ask me.
that's
No.
14.
Well,
That's 14. 13 is with an instructor.
Yeah.
It's like just teaching a basic training, only you're doing it through the computer instead of in the same room. That was 13. 14 is different.
it's
It's
self-directed
pre-recorded.
learning, Brian. Self-directed learning.
Yeah,
in
number
Canada-
14. Sorry, 14 is self-directed learning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Um,
partially.
yeah.
And courses have already been vetted, Brian, and approved by the International Board and been in existence for a number of years.
And I mean, a course leading to certification RTCT.
Basic
Mhm.
intensive. It's a basic.
It's a basic intensive.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've run that type of course, but not, just on choice theory topics for guidance counselors, not a reality therapy or not a certification course at all. And it works well, but just for basic, it makes sense, I suppose. Yeah. I wouldn't like to
think
see
it
the
should-
whole certification process run that way, though.
No, it's not.
No,
No, it's just basic.
Yeah.
I think it should be removed, Kim, because
okay.
I don't think it's something.
There's really no reason to discuss it. I don't know how it got on this list.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next one probably is where, well, I don't know. Let's just talk about the next one. We have our current policy, which says you must have a minimum of 3 different faculty teaching you basic, advanced, and certification. The recommendation is that you have 5 different faculty. Someone teaching you basic, someone teaching you basic practicum, someone teaching you advanced practicum, and cert. But the requirement is that you have a different person for basic, a different person for advanced, and a different person for certification. And this was another area that Linda was really strong on with me. She said, this is not something that should ever be changed. And so we've had so much pushback on this particular thing over the years. And the pushback comes from, I think it comes mainly from people who have a business and they're doing training and they feel like if they put all their money and energy into advertising, why should they have to give away their work to someone else? And on the other side, I would say that if you just have one person who teaches you, then you become a mini-me of that person and you don't really get a chance to develop your own style because you only have one person's perception of choice theory that you're learning. And I think we all know that everybody teaches it just a little bit differently and we have different areas of focus and specialty. And especially now that Zoom is an option, there's really no more reason why you can say, well, I don't have anybody within 500 miles of me and I don't have enough money to travel. I understand that is a challenge. So when the training committee looked at this, one of the things we thought might be helpful is if we kept the 3 different instructors or practicum supervisors, 3 different people in the mix. We want you to have 3 different people in your 5 stages of training, but they could be different at any level. It doesn't have to be a different basic instructor, advanced instructor, and certification. You could have one
Mhm.
person do your basic practicum, advanced week, and then somebody different for advanced practicum and somebody different for cert, and that would be okay. As long as you had at least 3 different people throughout your training. So that's what we were thinking of maybe changing it to, but we wanted to hear what everyone thought about it.
I would think the business discussion is outside of our brief because we are not employers, and that's their own problem, their own business. But I certainly would agree with Linda's stance that 5 is ideal, and there'll always be exceptions. In recent times, I've come to see how, and I don't have a business interest in this. I think differently about all of this, but I've seen how if I take a group through basic and they want me for practicum, there's a lot of great continuity there of understanding them, and it makes pedagogical sense, But I would still say ideally 5 people, and certainly absolutely essential to have at least 3 people. And I would agree with what Kim has said, that whatever levels of courses won't matter as long as there's 3, that there's a mixture,
I really support, I think 3 is reasonable and still sets a high standard of diversity. Because also, it even applies in terms of a basic practicum and an advanced practicum where you continue to nurture people. And the instructor doesn't want to do the practicums. They're just not free to do that. So if you lower it to 3, to me, that is something that's much more attainable.
I agree. I think 3, it's enough for someone to understand the difference between each instructor and the ideas.
So we're not actually changing, if we go with what we're saying, of course, we have more people to talk to, but if we go with what we're saying, we're not talking about changing the minimum requirement, because the minimum requirement has always been 3, and we're still recommending 5, but 3 is the minimum, and it could be at any level. We're not dictating the level like the current policy does. Okay. All right.
It's like what I say to parents: don't bring up your children with only 2 parents. Bring them up with as many parents as possible.
With the village, bring them up with the village.
Yeah, and send them down the street to the other parents when they're.
Yes.
Yes.
Want to annoy the other parents as well.
So when you're talking about the 3 different ones, you're specifying those are during the intensive trainings. So not the practica. But the other thing that
No,
I think what we run into
The
is
whole-
that at certification is where sometimes a lot of levels, but going back to what Brian said earlier about having policy and having the ability to make a case for an exception.
Yes.
To me, that makes a lot of difference in how I even think. So this would be policy, and it's nice to know we have exceptions, because there could be those things where the only person teaching cert week is the one I had for basic or whatever. Meanwhile, I want to get certified. It's just part of it is just based on numbers right now. How do we help people move forward? And so, but that would be an exception kind of thing. Are there any other comments on this?
Pat, I'm not sure what you just said. Kim and I both said no to a part of what you were saying.
Oh, because I was just clarifying that we're talking about 3 different instructors for the intensive. And
No, we're saying the intensives and the practicum. Over the 5 components, you need 3 faculty.
at
Okay.
any place in the process.
So, okay, because the way that this is stated, it looks like you're talking about basic and advanced intensives and a certification, as opposed to the practica. So if you're saying over the course of all 5, then somebody could do basic instruction, basic practicum, and advanced. And then, so it's okay if they do all those 3 in a row, the way that this is, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, So, and then my other thing. that I
So the
was
second
talking-
part of that sentence, Pat, where you read rather than requiring it for basic, advanced, and cert, that's how it used to be. That's what the current policy says. So that's where you got the basic, advanced, and cert. We're saying 3 different faculty members for 3 different portions of the training. Doesn't matter which 3.
Your question also doesn't include practica in there, so that could be confusing, Kim.
That's why I was confused.
Yeah.
Because it
Okay,
looks
well,
like the
I'll be more
intensive.
clear with next, this is a practice run then. I'll be more
Yeah,
clear in the
well,
afternoon.
this could just be me, but I was also thinking about what are our thoughts? But regardless of that, as long as we can ask for exceptions to the policy and make a case, I think there's a lot of things that we can make as policy, so, in my opinion. So anybody else have anything to add here? Otherwise, we're making good strides, Kim.
Well, I
so-
have a question that's not on the list. If I could just raise it.
I'm sorry,
Because
that's
we-
not allowed. Just kidding.
We have said several times that we're making policies with which can be circumvented with an exception. And so the question that I have is, does the exception come to WGI or does it go to the MO?
I think if WGI is developing the policy, then it should go to them.
Yes,
Yeah, I get
Yeah.
very few questions about exceptions. I think people are either going to their MO or they're making exceptions on their own and just doing them.
So
I
let me
get
ask-
some-
And I think that's valid, Kim, because I don't know that there's been any, well, I don't know, since 2009, 2016, whatever. It's kind of been, I've been confused myself as an instructor, so as to who to go to or who to talk to, so.
It probably would be an idea that if a member organization committee were approached about an exception, that they could manage it, but they should notify WGI that they have given this exception. In other words, gives WGI some sort of a sense of what is happening on the field, and where, if every week there's an exception, then some of the policies may need to be modified or changed in some way.
I think that's a good idea, especially because WGI doesn't meet, I mean, suppose it's something that needs to have an immediate answer and you don't have the whole WGI to have input on that if we left the decision up to them. So I like the
Yeah.
idea of the MO.
It's just
Yeah.
better communication between everybody, I think.
Yeah, but the
Yeah, so
bottom
that's
line is that the courses are run by William Glasser International. William Glasser International is who recognizes faculty. I mean, that's otherwise we just break up.
Okay, so the next one is about what should be the maximum number at certification, and it used to be 10. Our old policy says 10. But we find that there's a lot of things that used to happen in certification that don't happen anymore. We don't have Dr. Glasser coming in and doing role play. We don't have Bob Wobbleding coming in and doing role play. We don't have that ethics presentation. So we found, at least here in the States, that 14 can be done. It requires a skillful instructor to be able to handle 14, but we had Bruce Allen do a week of 14 in cert, and he said, I could do it, but I could never do 15. So 14 needs to be the absolute cutoff. Maybe we want to go with 12 because 12 could be more comfortable for anybody that might be doing certification, but 10 seems to be low given the activities that aren't happening anymore. So just a question about what your thoughts are.
I did a certification with 10 and I could barely get it done, so I don't know. Maybe that was me.
I think if you had 14, you probably could have gotten it done, Maureen, because you would have adjusted your time. I know you would have.
Because that's
Anyway.
you, Maureen. You would do that.
Well, and
So
Kim,
I think-
you're
sorry.
just talking certification, are you? Not
Yeah.
basic or advanced numbers.
We talked about, we didn't talk about maximum basic and advanced. They stayed at 16 unless you have a practicum supervisor, and then there can be 20. But we did talk about minimum numbers. this was just for certification because it seemed like the number wasn't appropriate anymore in the old policy. 10 seems to be a smaller number than we need.
Right. And what you're factoring in there is the presentations that people do and so on.
And the role plays and yeah, the teaching that happens. Yeah, all of that.
But
I like the
mathematically,
idea of
like, how
12.
much time does each participant require for, they do 2 role plays and 1 presentation?
Yeah.
So how long is required for
30
that, to do that
minutes.
properly?
45 minutes per person, maybe. 2 15-minute role plays, half it. But you see, you take time to discuss
see,
the
you're-
There's
presentations.
processing. Oh, yeah. it's-
Processing and all that. Like I really, I would find it tough to do more than 10.
I would
by
say
myself.
it's 2 hours each.
Yeah.
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 And I think the loss is that you lose the reflection. It just becomes bang, 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 one after another, and there isn't really time to actually just, evaluate and,
Process.
yeah.
I personally
No,
like the idea of 12. Then you can do triad role play. You can do a lot of small group things as well as the large group. So that's my number that I would go for.
Well, let's say it was 12, Pat. I mean, and an individual instructor could say, I really will only deal with 10. Do you know, we don't, it's no big policy issue there, is it? The minimum would be and the maximum would be a policy issue.
Well, and truthfully, I've done certification with 12 when Linda was running.
Yeah.
She had us do that many.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Could we have
She
a
broke
range?
a policy. The policy says 10.
Mhm.
We
Could
went,
we
and
have
then
a range in the policy?
And then the last question, this was actually discussed a lot when we were talking about how many hours training should be, the minimum number of hours. But we have some people who do 3-day trainings and we have some people who do 4-day trainings. And it seems to be very confusing to our customers with what should they do, a 3 or a 4-day training? And, it's different. It used to be a 3-day training was 21 hours and a 4-day training was 27 hours. You got the same certificate and you paid the same amount of money, which made, I had questions about that as the executive director, and it was hard for me to explain that to people. So we changed the number of hours from 27 to 24 as the minimum. And we said, you're going to do 24 hours, whether you're doing a 3 or 4-day training. So we know a 3-day training with 8 hours a day of instruction is a lot for most people. However, in Asia, that is not an uncommon amount of time, and they're very trained and skillful at being able to attend for that amount of time in a 3-day training. So I don't know if it makes a difference now, as long as we have harmonized the 3 and the 4-day training. It's the same training. You're getting exactly the same. It's just we're cramming 24 hours into 3 days versus taking 4 days to get through the same amount of material. So do we want to keep 3 and 4-day intensive trainings? That's the question. Do we want to keep them that way? And
But I just say,
again,
in Ireland, we've never gone to 4 days. We've always done 5 days. We've required a minimum of 28 hours, and we ask our participants, would they be prepared to do 30? And they all are glad to do 30.
yeah, I'm not surprised.
I can't see myself doing a basic course in 24 hours. Not the quality
it.
one anyway.
I get it.
Yeah.
I do. And I've heard from other people. I agree with you, Brian, because I've always done, I used to do 4.5 days because that was my model that was done with me, 4.5. And I loved it. Now you're hearing that people can't be released from work for that many days. It becomes a real challenge to get people to come. And there was a big thing here in the States where people felt like the length of our training was too long. I think I mentioned, I don't think you heard me say this, but I got a certificate. I am a certified, I forget the clinical something in trauma, certified clinical trauma specialist. That's my title. You know how many hours I had to get that certification? 12 hours. And I'm a certified trauma specialist. I mean, it's almost embarrassing to say. So that is kind of the model here, at least. PESI is the training organization, and they certify people in 6 hours, 12 hours. I don't think I've ever seen a PESI training that was 30 hours or even 28 hours. It might be level 1 and level 2 where they get 2 certificates if they do that, but it depends on where in the world you are. What is the standard, I think. Anyway, that's
Can I just share something that's kind of happened in the organization I work for, which is the Salvation Army? They've tried to roll out a corporate program on becoming really understanding of the Indigenous harm that has occurred in Australia and shifting towards a more positive relationship. And that course was offered over 10 hours, but over 6 months. So we pretty much could actually take the time either during work or in our own time. But it was so interesting how everyone balked at the 10 hours. And I just suddenly, to your point, Kim, am realizing that people are really questioning anything more than, you know, a Zoom or a webinar type meeting. So it's not providing a solution, but I do think that we know that the programs on choice theory, it's about integration, and I'm not too sure that that's the intent of most other courses.
No.
So, yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not. Yeah, you're right.
I have offered, since I've been doing Zoom, it's 2 years now, I offer 24 hours with a caveat of the extra sessions. And every group I've done have opted for the extra session. So in fact, I'm doing 27 hours.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Isn't that interesting? I love that.
The other thing
I
that's
think we need to
interesting
start
though
it-
is that this is a Zoom, you know,
Yeah.
a distance kind of thing where people often have more flexibility because they don't have to step out or whatever. So
I think the basic question is, what are we trying to teach? What standard are we trying to reach? And then what is required to get there, instead of starting at how many hours would we like to do?
Right.
I mean, a lot of people
Yeah.
would say to us, well, we would love to, you know, have shorter courses or courses on different days or whatever. They don't say that about university courses. They somehow think they can do it with our courses. But we really need to be, you know, objective oriented. What is it we want to teach, and how long is needed to teach that? We also think you have to bear in mind that if somebody does basic training here, they can go to Canada and do their advanced, or they can go to Australia and do their advanced. And there needs to be some amount of synchronization for that to happen.
Agree.
I would agree with that, Brian, with one caveat, and that is, when I wrote a book the first time and I was getting coached on how to do that, I was told, you don't write the book that you want to write, you write the book that people want to read.
Yeah.
So I think we have to also think about, what is it that our customers are looking for, or we're going to be holding to our standards of quality, and there's not going to be anybody there to take our courses, or there's going to be less people to take our courses. So the question becomes, how do we deliver what our customers want at the level of quality that we're accustomed to doing it? And I don't know the answer to that question, but I think that that's the next level that we have to start looking at.
Yeah, but we also need to, you know, if people are going to counsellors to say, well, that's a reality therapy qualified person, and they weren't very good, and they find out it's really because they did a very short course. You know, if the quality of the courses are good,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine someone coming along and say, I want to learn to drive, but I want to learn in 1 day?
Yeah.
Because I don't have time. You say, no, hold on. If you want to learn to drive, you want to reach certain standards, and that standard requires a certain amount of training. So I think we need to say, what is it we're trying to do, and then how do we do it, and when do we do it, and how many hours, and so on.
Yeah. that's our next level. That's exactly where we're
Yeah.
going, Brian. As soon
Yeah.
as we get this interim thing in place, that's exactly where we're going.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is a really relevant point, though, in terms of customers, because we've lost a lot of school people who literally cannot take the time, and our program is intensive the way it's laid out at this point.
Hmm.
So,
Well,
You
and
know,
I
there's-
just
there's a-
recently, I'm sorry, go ahead, Maureen.
No, it's okay. I was just thinking there's a lot of factors, there's overwhelm from the internet, but there's also the trauma that people have experienced the last 2 years with the pandemic.
Hmm.
And we have a lot to offer those people. And if we can give it to them in the way that they need to receive it for a while
yeah,
and continually adjust, then I think we'll set a standard. We have a standard. We just need to stick to it, but do it in a way that the customer is happy. My experience has been very good doing it that way. And I haven't changed a thing in my training, Brian. I still have involvement activities. I still have breakouts, there's hardly anything I've changed except they print their own materials, which is kind of nice.
yeah.
I do the same. And I was just going to say, I just did a basic training. I have 2 guys in New York City, both owning a private practice of their own. One has 30 employees, 30 counselors, the other has 60. And they both have me come in and do basic training for their new counselors. And the one wants me there in person. He wants the in-person contact. The other one wants me to do it on Zoom and do and I do for the first person, I do it over a weekend. And then the other person wants me to do it over Zoom so we can do it 1 day a week, because these counselors here in the States, the model is if you don't work that day, you don't get paid.
Yeah.
So if you take 4 days off in 1 week, you lose almost your whole income for the week, or you're doing all your sessions in the evening after we're done and you're coming in exhausted the next day. So 1 day a week on Zoom has turned out to be a beautiful setup. We did every Friday for 4 weeks.
Hmm.
And the comments were, and we did 8 hours, not 8 hours, we did 7 hours a day. We had an hour for lunch. So it was, no, I'm sorry, 6 hours a day, 3 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon, an hour in the middle.
Hmm.
And their comment was, I can't believe how fast this time went.
Mm,
So
yeah.
it was useful and relevant. And I think, that could be a model as we move forward, working with counselors in private practice, at least.
Mhm.
We have to think about that.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Well,
and what I was thinking of is that 3 or 4 days depends on the number of people that you have in the basic week too.
Yeah.
If you have 10,
No, I'm
She's
sorry,
frozen.
Sonia,
You're breaking up.
you're a warm person, but you're frozen on screen. So maybe you can chat in.
Oh,
you're
there she
back?
is. You
There we
moved.
go.
We couldn't hear you, Sonia. You were frozen for us.
sorry. It says my internet is not very stable. Do you see me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, I was just telling that it's the number of people, it's a difference to if you have 3 or 4 days, because it's not the same thing if you have 10 people for a basic or any course than if you have a larger number. So I don't think that it's very important the 3 or 4 days. What it's most important is really the skills and the competencies that at the end you need to develop with the participants.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
Totally
But some-
agreed.
Yeah, somebody mentioned school people having a problem with the time. That's because we're trying to ram the standard certification course down their throats.
Exactly.
Instead of adapting to school, that school teachers can take a few hours off now and again. Our courses then should take a few hours off now and again, but there should be enough hours to bring them to a level where they can actually use the material well. Otherwise, it becomes a farce.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that was just my point about not being rigid on how the hours are delivered.
Yeah.
If we
Yeah.
can start to flex with that.
Yeah. yeah.
So the
Yeah.
question was about 3 or 4 day, but it seems like the discussion is more about hours than
Yeah.
days.
Yes.
And
Right.
so
Yeah.
to have the flexibility of saying, you know, like you just said, Kim, you're doing like over 1 day over 3 weekends or whatever it is. So so to me, that the content piece and the timing for the content is probably more the question than whether it's 3 or 4 days.
Hmm.
I think for me, what helps in our conversation is it doesn't matter the days as long as they're getting the same program. It
Right.
shouldn't be a different program
yeah.
with less content for a 3-day than it is for a 4-day. That
Yeah, yeah,
I think that answers my issue.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's the value add. Yep.
Yeah.
It's
Okay,
interesting,
well,
Kim, what you mentioned about the 3 hours and an hour for lunch and 3 hours. I found that to work very well. And in fact, I did the Zoom session that I designed around 3-hour modules, if you like, with a 15-minute break in the middle.
Yeah,
And
me too.
one of the big improvements in Ireland is Zoom. The people are more punctual in Zoom. You know, you
Yes,
say
they
be
are.
back in 15 minutes. They are back in 15 minutes. You know, it's nice. You know.
It is.
I invite them
It
to
is.
bring their snacks and have them in front of them and they never leave.
Yeah, and the kids can come in and say hello as well. You know?
Yeah, they
The
do.
cat,
And
the cat
dogs and the
sits on their
cats.
lap, and the dog
Yeah,
licks their
yeah.
face, you know.
Yeah,
And they have no pants on, but you don't know.
yeah.
Oh, listen,
Unless they
I've had
forget. Yeah.
I've had people stand up in front of a Zoom camera and show things I wish I'd never seen. So
Yeah.
I
some
was
things
I was
happy to
talking.
see. So there you go.
Yeah.
Make sure I always put my pants on for Zoom.
I just turned my camera off, Kim.
I was talking to somebody once in Zoom, a private session too, and the husband came out of the bathroom behind. Fortunately, he was wearing a towel, but I had to say, tell him to wear it.
Oh dear. Well, I want to say thank you to all of you for being here. We got through everything in an hour and a half. That's miraculous. It was nice to have a small group so we could just do the conversation here. Maybe this afternoon will be the same, I hope. And Pat, always thank you to you for your expert facilitation. We appreciate you
you.
for that.
My
And
pleasure.
thank you all for caring enough about this to be here to try to help us craft this interim policy as we move towards what we all want, I think, which is some kind of competency-based program. So,
Kim, something that probably no one has realized, or maybe it's only old timers like myself remember this. It was you who introduced the board to Zoom long before the rest of the world heard about it.
I remember that.
Yeah. We will hold that
Well
against
done.
you forever.
I should have stock in Zoom. I would be rich right now. But yeah,
Yeah.
Zoom has
It's
been
nice to see
excellent.
everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
Nice
you.
to see you too. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
So, we are here for the third time, and I'm going to tell you that with the group we had this morning, we were able to get through everything on the list, but we had a very small group and we didn't break into small groups to talk about it. I'm wondering if we could do the same thing here. Kat, what do you think? Even though we don't have a small group, we might be able to stay in a large group and just hear from people and even have less time than breaking into small groups. What do you think? I see heads nodding.
Well,
Let's
I know
give
everybody.
it a try.
Yes, okay, because it seems to be my perception that we're all curious about what each other is thinking. So, but I will tell you that as the moderator of this, I'm going to be watching time because usually we break out for like
Yes.
10 minutes. And so this morning when a conversation seemed to be going on, but then started to repeat itself, then I just suggest that we move forward.
Yes, I want you to.
because- Yeah, because we're not the
Ye-
decision makers. We're just giving feedback for others to look at or, to see what we were talking about, right, Kim?
Yes, I want you to be the strong facilitator I know you can be. Yeah, Judith.
Are we putting raising our hand thing? Or are we doing this? Or do you?
I really don't care. Although I have to say, no, it's best if you raise the hand, not like this, but the electronic hand, because when I share my screen, I can only see about 4 of you at a time. So if you have this hand up, I won't know. So yeah, if you do the mechanical hand, it puts you on my first page. I'll be able to see you. So that'll be good. Now, I know that some of you, this is your first time here. So let me just share the process, and we'll take it from there. The training committee was very aware of how old the policy and procedure manual is that we've been operating from. Was from 2009. And even though some member organizations have updated a policy and procedure manual for themselves, we had many MOs that were operating from our 2009 policy and procedure manual, even though we've replaced some of those policies. And our plan going forward is not to have a policy and procedure manual, but to have each policy listed separately so that they can be adjusted separately, and we don't have to redo an entire policy and procedure manual every time one policy changes. So the biggest piece that we hadn't conquered yet out of the policy and procedure manual is the training policy. So the training committee looked at the training policy, and there, let me back up, because we did have one update to the training policy that was done by actually 2 board members, not a full committee, just 2 people, and the board approved it. But even though it was put up on the website for comment, I think there were people that just missed it. And when we sent out the new policy for people to look at, they're like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Because it got changed to, we can do a basic training with 1 person. And that was acceptable. And there were just some other things that were changed that there was some pushback on. So when the training committee went back and looked at the current policy and what the current practices were, we noted down all of the discrepancies, and we brought the discrepancies to this meeting. And we asked as many faculty as could attend and to share their thoughts about what we were looking at. In these meetings, we're not looking to make a decision. We're just looking to discuss. And then after the meeting, we've been putting up a SurveyMonkey survey for people to vote. And when the voting is done, the training policy is going to revise the policy and send it out to everyone. And we're calling it an interim policy, because our true quality world picture about training is that it's going to be a true competency-based program, and that it isn't going to be that you have to be in a seat for 24 hours. It has to be 4 days long. You need to have, all of these time-based elements. When Dr. Glasser had a quote about schools and prisons and how they were the only place where quality was sacrificed for time. And we don't want to model that. So we want to move into a competency-based training model. The challenge with that is that we have 23 member organizations who think about competency in at least 23 different ways. And I've been working with WGI internationally for many years, and I know that because of the way that we work, and I'm very proud of how we work, it takes a long time to make even small changes. And this is a huge change. I know it's going to be probably at least 5 years in the making. And so we needed to make a change as an interim policy rather than continuing from the 2009 policy. So when we get this squared away, we'll be able to move into our conversation about competency-based training model. And that will be for the new training committee and the new executive director and the new board chair. So we'll see who that's going to be going forward. let me see, what else did I want to say? So today, we're not looking to convince each other. We're not trying to argue and say, I'm right, you're right, no, you're wrong. It's none of that. We're just giving our input, and then we're going to have a vote about it after this meeting is over. And then we're going to have a new policy, and we're going to get feedback on that policy. So the goal is for WGI to set the standards, and if MOs want to up the standards, they can. But we want to set a minimum requirement for quality, and then MOs can do from that what they want. So does anybody have questions before we go into what the actual? Okay, all right, good.
I just, Kim, I just want to clarify, because you said we'll have a vote when this meeting is over. But what you're referring to is an online survey
Yes.
vote, not us in
Yes.
this group right now.
Correct. Yes. Thank you for that. Okay, give me a second to find what I want to show you. All right.
Jim, you have a question?
Yes. I am a little concerned about Ashby. I think she's in the midst of a man-eating plant.
Okay,
It's
so
troubling me
that
just a little.
plant is called, I believe, Turkish cap. And it is really about 4 or 5 inches tall. And that was taken last summer in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, in the Shenandoah National Forest.
Wow.
So it's
Thank-
not going to eat you alive.
It's not going to eat me alive. It's not quite that big. And it is not in a, I mean, we are in a tropic, so to speak, but it is not like in the Caribbean or in the Amazon. It's right here in Central Virginia.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing
Very
that.
cool.
And
I'm glad
even
you're
if it
safe.
was a man-eating plant, I think Ashby would be okay.
That's right.
Indeed.
It's not a woman-eating plant. All right. So when we talked this morning, one of our questions is, should the basic and advanced intensive ever be done together? We have some instructors who have combined them and taught basic and advanced people at the same time. And so we just want to hear from you what you think about that. Anybody have a thought?
Could you-
This might
Which number are we on?
10.
I'll jump in there. I don't think I would be very good at this point in teaching that way, but I can see that other instructors would be. And I can see that there are, so it depends on what you know about some of the people in the groups.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Judith, I see your hand.
Excuse me. In my mind, it depends. I would not have a policy that would say it could never be done. But I would want to have some parameters, I guess I would call it. For example, if another person, a practicum supervisor, somebody else that was there,
Okay. All right. Thank you. Amir, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's possible, but the thing is, I think we need some, learning space for people to digest and absorb the principles. Basically, this is the first training they are doing in choice theory and reality therapy. So I think it's better if they have some time to internalize the first course, and then after a while do the second one.
Yeah, so this one is about, I'm not sure if you understand, Amir. So let's say I'm holding a training and I have 5 people who are basic people and I have 5 people who are advanced people, and I put them together and I teach them at the same time.
Mhm.
No, I thought it's one group. They are 5 people. They are doing the basic training, and right after the basic training, they are doing the practical. That was my understanding.
Yeah, no, that's not what this means. We have had some instructors who take basic people and advanced people and teach them together. And
No.
so, yeah,
Then
you
is
say no
no.
to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then is no. Okay.
Yeah,
So
I
I'll
can
give,
tell
I'll
you.
give an example of what I meant. A good friend of mine in the past, maybe 3 or 4 years, attended a basic week. He is well familiar with choice theory. He has been for many years. He's had lots of his staff trained, but he himself had never done a basic week. He felt like the instructor was extremely adept at challenging him where he was without losing other people in the room. So from his description, and I wish I knew who the instructor was so I could give her that credit, but he felt like his needs were met. And if he had already had a basic week and was working on an advanced week, I think that would have worked fine.
Okay. All right, Sharon, I see you next.
Okay, thank you. I agree that I think that internalization on the advanced student might be frustrated by somebody just beginning. It would take someone that's very adept, unless there's someone somewhat like Ashby was just describing. A true basic student needs very thorough explanations, and maybe at a slightly different level than the advanced. And the advanced might feel a little bit cheated because you're spending time trying to help the beginning people come on board with the ideas. It's a tightrope to walk. Not unlike some of the others. I don't say it can't be done, but I think it would be very difficult and needs to be very well looked at if we're going to go that way.
Yeah. Okay, Jim.
I was going to share a couple of things, but I think I'll just stick to this one for now. I think there's pros and cons to it, and I think that it's something that it's not just a black and white issue. So recently I did one of the intensive weeks, and we had people, so I did the basic training week, and then we had some people on other levels, and that's it worked well for a couple of reasons. It was really nice to be able to see what some of the people who were on the other end of the training sessions were doing, and that actually helped me to know what kinds of things to look to do in preparation and in demonstration in the final part of the training. But I can see some drawbacks to it too if somebody is if it's not facilitated just right. And I think that part of where the Institute is heading is to make more distinction of competencies for each of those levels, which would clarify some of those things going in. So if you had a mixed group, then each person would know their expectations for their level. So if that's in line, then I think that would help the training process a whole lot.
Yeah, that's the future of our training process, not for this particular piece, but yeah, that is the direction.
Okay.
That is the direction that we want to head, for sure. So thank you for that. Wendell, you're next. Pat, I know you have your hand up. Are you trying to say time's up, or
No,
you have something to say?
I have something to say.
It's all right. So I'll put you in. I've got you
But
in the
I'll
rotation.
let you
then.
know when the time comes up too. So
Okay,
we've only
all right.
got 4 minutes left based on 10 minutes.
Okay, Wendell.
I'm thinking of the training that Bob Wobbling has done for 20 years or so. And he might have one or two advanced intensive training and 2 or 3 basic training groups all together. And at least how he used to do it is that he would do the lecturing on the major topics, and then people went out and do individual groups with people like me and you and whatever to be their small group persons. And I went to one of those. I wish I had it fresh in my mind how the advanced weak people felt being in there because Bob would have had to have done the basics right down to the core, to it. It's not exactly what we're talking about, but it's the lecture part of it. And some of our colleagues who long departed from us used to do the same thing too. They'd get large groups and they would lecture to the whole group, and then we break out too. I'm not clear. It'd be interesting to hear Bob Wobbling's take on how he still does that.
He does still do them together, I know. And he's one of the people that does do them together. And he told me when I started that he had permission from Glasser from years ago to do it that way. I'll just speak for myself, even though I don't have my hand up. I know that I have a pretty good memory, especially when I was taking my basic and advanced trainings. I had a better memory than I do now. And I know that if I went to that particular type of a training for a basic, and then I later came back for an advanced, and I had exactly the same lecture that I had in basic, I would be pretty mad about it because I think I paid my money to have the same thing 2 times. I would think I should be getting something a little more in depth, but that's just me in another aside. But I know that Bob would be in favor of that, and there are other people who do it that way as well. And I know that our policy and procedure manual says that you can't combine basic and advanced. And I know there were 2 things that Linda Harshman told me when I took the executive director job, and one was never combine basic and advanced people together. And there's another one on the list that she said, don't do. So I'll tell you when we come up to that one as well. But those were the 2 things that she said to me. And I took her advice seriously, and I try to enforce, although, I'm not an enforcer and we don't force anybody. So it's just reminding people that our policies say you're not supposed to do that. But we're trying to find out, are our policies archaic? Should we be doing this? We know that the numbers are down. So if you have 5 people who want training and 2 of them are basic and 3 are advanced, then what do? It's questionable. So we had in our morning session, what was suggested was policy should be not to put them together, but that if there is an extenuating circumstance that you could ask for an exception. And I think that could be a solution, but that's one of the things that we talked about. So I'm sorry, I'm rambling. Sue, you had your hand up.
I would agree with that for certain circumstances to enable that to happen. One of the things that I'm thinking, though, is I'm not sure it's good for us actually as an organization. And from a marketing perspective, I think there could be an issue with that. Because if we're showing people that we have these levels and that people are going to these levels and now suddenly we don't have the levels, and I'm thinking about it from a school district's perspective, who are always trying to save time and they're always trying to save money. So it's like, oh, well, good. It's too expensive anyway. And this is going to take how many years? Oh, all right, if we can combine everything, good, we can get this done this time, this much money. Cheaper, better, let's do that. So I'm afraid of the perspective. I mean, Kim, as you were talking about, if I'm in a basic and it combined with people who are in advanced, all right, yippee yay, but then I'm going to advance and I have the same thing. And now I'm the gifted student because I've already been through that. There is a part of me that says, unless the instructor knows how to really differentiate, I'm getting cheated. And then on the other hand, I mean, I'm not sure the people who would be paying for me might be upset about that. But on the other hand, I think from a marketing perspective, it's not a particularly good idea. Could we combine? I can see, like when we would do it where I worked, there'd be 2 instructors and 2 different
Right.
levels perhaps going on. And then there would be a lecture, but then they'd separate back into their levels. Then it might be a lecture. But then the other thing that we might do is we combine for role play. And for role play, the advanced people served as the counselors.
Mhm.
And the basic people were the clients. You know, so they had more than just the instructor's frame.
Yeah. Yeah, we've often done that in organizations where you have a basic and advanced happening at the same time. And you usually are together for involvement activities. And then you separate out, or you might come together to watch a role play, you know, a video of glass or something like that. So yeah, that's been done. And we're not saying that shouldn't be done. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about one instructor, basic and advanced students. Is that okay? Pat?
Okay, so the first thing I wanted to say is what you've already said, is that we were talking this morning about the difference between policy and we have policy and then have exceptions. So that was pretty clear that that could happen and that making the case would be the issue. But since then, just let me address how I went through all of my training except certification with Bob Wobbelding's group. And my experience was that we shared the first day, early in the morning, we had a lecture. And my experience with that was that even though it was basic and advanced together, it was like listening to Glasser over and over again. You heard the same things that he was saying, but you integrated them. I integrated them. I'll just own it myself. I integrated them in a different way when I heard them again and again and again. And so by cert week, I'd heard those things over 5 different instructors. It's the same basic thing, but the way that I got them and learned them, and I always picked up something else. So as far as repeating that first session, that first day, I'm not saying that's the way it should be or anything else. I'm just sharing my experience, how it can actually be helpful. And then in that same group, what would happen is that we would break into basic training, advanced training, and then we had different instructors. And in those groups, we also did more comprehensive discussion about theory and practice and role plays. So it wasn't that it was necessarily a totally shared experience. It was very different. And to me at the time, of course, I didn't have a different frame of reference, but I thought it was, it worked out okay. So, but my ultimate thing to this question would be, I would say that shouldn't be the norm, that they be taught together, but I like the idea of having policy and then being able to apply for exceptions. So that's it. And I want to tell you, we're at 15 minutes. So I see that Jim has his hand up, so I'm not sure if anybody else has something to add, but that's where we stand with this conversation.
Jim, you have something quick?
Yeah, I would agree with Pat, and thank you for that. I just think that there may be situations in which we need that versatility to be able to do exceptions. But the way Pat described it is, like if you're applying for the exception, then that gives people an opportunity to say, okay, how will you still achieve what we want to achieve and the effective level, the quality level, and so forth. So, and again, structure, if we have some structure of how to do that written down, then it would help people to, when that exception comes up, that we can hand that to them and say, okay, these are examples of how to do that. Thank you, Bill. Thank you.
Yeah, I like that idea. Okay, so I'm sorry, Pat, your turn.
No, that's okay. I was just saying, are we ready to move on to the next question? And I guess I also want to remind everybody that this discussion is going to be shared we don't have to make the decision. We're just giving our thoughts on it for other people to engage in. So for me, that's a good thing to know that I'm not a decision maker. I'm just an input giver.
Right.
Okay, so let's go to the next one.
So the next one, I don't even think that we have to talk about. If I can share with you what we talked about this morning. Currently, our policy says that we need to give 30 days notice for announcing an upcoming training. So this is when everybody put all their training through WGI, and they would fill out an application, you know, a notice for a particular training coming up. And we asked for 30 days notice, but when the training committee was looking at it, we thought, well, it would be good to have 60 days notice if they want the training listed on the WGI website. So we were looking at this, is 60 days enough, or is 30 days enough, or should it be 60 days? And basically what we decided was, if the goal is to advertise on WGI's website, we're going to recommend 60 days. So you get 2 months up on the website, here's your training. But if you send us something and it's 30 days out, we'll still put it up. It's just that you may not get much from it because people are going to come to your training. They might have to arrange travel. It might require a visa, you know, so 60 days makes more sense to me, but we'll put it up no matter what. So I don't think that this really is an issue. MOs, however, will need to decide how much time they need to get to be able to approve a training. 30 days may be perfectly fine, but that's going to be something that will be left to member organizations to decide. Is there anything anybody needs to say or talk about around that topic, number 11?
Yes, how do I get my thumb down? Oh, I got it down, okay.
Yeah, thumbs up from Jim.
Okay. All right, good. So we'll go on to the next one. This one is going to require a little more backstory and a little more time, I think. So currently, our certificates that are given out from WGI say that you are certified in CT/RT. And we've had people ask, why isn't LM listed? They might be in the business sector and they want to have some, you know, some way of showing that they learned lead management. And then on the other end is simply putting our CT on the certificates and its many applications. And I'll tell you where that came from and why, and just to be part of the conversation. So we used to have a member organization called the European Association for Reality Therapy. And they were quite a robust organization. They have many members, and they also did the work in Europe to get reality therapy listed as evidence-based practice and scientific-based practice. So they have quite a training program there, and it's not the same as our training program. So I believe, I don't know exactly the right numbers, I'm not going to say it right, but they have a 2-year program, but it is not the same as our 2-year program. They do something like 40 hours at a basic level, and then there's 80 hours of practicum. I mean, it's a lot of time. And then they have a 4-year program that's specifically for counselors. And they have a 5-year program that's for psychotherapists, because in Europe, they make a distinction between counselors and psychotherapists. And they had to separate from WGI because their program is approved through the European Association of Psychotherapy. So that's EAP. EAP certifies in Europe all the schools of psychology for evidence-based and scientific-based practice. And they have to have a 4-year and a 5-year program, which they do have. And their certificates say you are certified in reality therapy. And they could not stay associated with us because they didn't want the European Association of Psychotherapy to see that we certify people in 2 years. And it's only about 100 hours of training, because it would confuse them. And they would say, I thought your training was 4 years and 5 years. What is this 2-year training? How can that be? So they asked us, they want to reconnect with us. They want to be one of our member organizations, but they don't feel like they can if we are still saying that we're certifying people in reality therapy. They say it's fine that we're teaching reality therapy, but their brand of reality therapy is different from ours. So if I could give you just a little bit of background on that. Leon Loit was the founder of the European Association for Reality Therapy. And when Glasser came out with his book, Counseling with Choice Theory, a New Reality Therapy, Leon was trying to wrap his head around that. And he spent a lot of hours in conversation with Dr. Glasser about what exactly he meant. And in those many hours of conversation, Leon understood that Glasser no longer wanted to use the procedures that lead to change. What do you want? What are you doing to get it? Is it working? Let's make a plan. Instead, he was advising Leon to focus on the external control beliefs that people have and to change those beliefs. And when you change beliefs, you'll change behavior. So that is how they work in Europe. It's different from how we work, and they want to distinguish themselves from our 2-year program. And they thought a change in certificate to say that we're certifying people in choice theory would be a good thing to do. So we're giving 3 options here. Should our certificate say certified in choice theory and its many applications? Should it say CTRT like it does now? Or should we add LM, CTRT and LM? So I'm going to stop talking and see what people have to say. Or if you have questions, I'll answer to the best of my ability. Jim.
Well, part of my thought is when we train people on different levels, that becomes a challenge. It's always been a challenge. I guess I could speak to that a lot. I'll try to keep it very short. But in my grad program, people may have heard me say this before, but we were encouraged to choose a theory and stick with it for the next 3 years. I chose Albert Ellis's rational emotive therapy. Then after a few weeks, I changed because I didn't like his language. And I had to do an extensive paper in interrogation on that before I could change. But I basically spent 3 years, and I was mentored by someone at our university, Dr. Miller, who was already certified. By the time I got to an intensive training week with Dr. Wobelding, I had already read like 20 books on it and had been practicing it for 3 years on a grad program. My thought is that, and we had discussion back then, and I had to travel to Chicago from Asheville, North Carolina to do my practicums because I couldn't find anybody licensed as a counselor, and they wanted me to be with someone who was licensed in order to learn the RT part. My thought is this: if we are trying to distinguish and advance people in their training, why don't we require them at different levels? Like if they're a teacher, and they start out with the quality schools concept, why don't we, in the advanced levels, have them demonstrating it in other areas and adding some material from other areas so that they can become better at their teaching aspect? So I get better at doing reality therapy than I do teach some quality school stuff, or when I engage in some quality school stuff. And then I also get better at it when I do some lead management concepts. I can take that back to my reality therapy sessions. So I could go both ways and just leave it at CT and let people explain what they're good at. But I think if we do CT, RTLM, and we make that part of our curriculum at advanced levels, you know, as people are progressing, that they be somewhat, at least moderately or mildly competent in the other two areas. That would be really important to the Institute as well, because if you're out there doing a presentation, you want to be able to touch on all three, because people are going to be listening who are business people when you're doing school stuff and so forth. So that's my 2 cents. Thank
So
you.
what would you like the certificates to say if you had to choose? What would it be, CTRTLM?
I think it's going to depend on what we want people to do and what competencies levels we're asking them to do. I think that when we're looking at competencies, somebody ought to be, if you're focusing on one area or the other, that's great, but you ought to be able to at least touch on the other two competently, you know, with some low level of competency at least. And in that case, I think it would behoove us to get all three on there and encourage people to do that and let them know they're going to need to do that. You know, you're going to have to come out of your comfort zone a little bit. You know, I think that if I could backtrack just a little bit, I would always encourage certificates of attendance and accomplishment outside of the certification process. And I think that at some point, when you're looking to get faculty in there, then you're talking about a more sophisticated level of competency.
Right.
So
You are.
that's another discussion, but I think that if you're going to do CT, you're still going to want people to be competent in those other two areas. And if you put it on the certificate with all three, then I think you're pressing the idea, you're pushing them into that, you're kind of creating the conversation. So I think it would, long story short, go with the CTRTLM, because that's really what we're after with competency. You got to be competent in all three areas.
Okay, Pat, I see your hand and you're supposed to be facilitating. So I'm going to pull back and let you do this. And you can say what you want to say and then get the rest of people with their hands up.
Oh, all right. So, so this is just my opinion and thought about this morning. Is that this is not one of the options, but I'm just talking, is that the idea that we have choice theory and its many applications. That's so vague. To me, it just, how do you define that? And what does that can mean? A lot of different things. And then the other part of it, thinking about the EART in that organization that needs the certificate to say reality therapy. Reality therapy looks really different there than it looks in the United States. So to put that on there, and then people in the United States, for example, you know, I assume this might be true somewhere else, but we're not trained the same way. So the competence measurements are not equal. And so it's pretty hard to put that down there. And then that should be what everybody is being certified in. So that's the dilemma to me. Same thing with CTRTLM. So if I was going to say one of these things, I would just say choice theory CT. But the other part that I would like to see discussed is maybe like I work in a counseling program, and it's an accredited program. We have a master's in counseling, and then we have specializations in certain areas: clinical mental health, marriage, couple and family, school counseling, addictions counseling. And so we all have this our diplomas say Master of Counseling, but for our purposes as an organization, we could say certification in choice theory with whatever sequence, specialization in reality therapy. So we could also think about how we could look at that and kind of divide them up so that it doesn't have to be this limiting kind of thing, but people who are interested very specifically, like EART, you know, they could have that. Although still, my dilemma is, how do we have that when our programs are very different? you know, because you could hire somebody from EART to come over and teach reality therapy, and meanwhile you've got somebody else who's doing it and it looks totally different. So that's kind of the challenges. So, and then my thought on it. Okay, so let's go up to Judith.
Oh, okay. I was just going to lower my hand because you clarify I was going to ask for can say whatever we want. So certified, but then underneath it, that's what I thought Kim was talking about. Then you'd have certified in choice theory, and then like reality therapy, lead management, quality school, or education, business, counseling.
Just as areas of specialization,
Yeah.
you know, so that's how we could. And then I think Jim said, you know, at the advanced week, or maybe even a basic practicum, whoever you're working with can help you move forward in your area of specialization. You know, maybe there could be a basic training in choice theory. Everybody's learning choice theory, but your focus is different depending on how you want to use it. So that's my thought of that. So did you have anything that you wanted to add in addition to that then, Judith? You're okay? We'll move on to Amir.
Yeah, thank you, Pat. I think we come to this point that what is the organization's vision? I mean, we have the competency-based model coming in the next 5 years, you say, okay? So if we are going this is our vision, that we are going to specialize our trainings. For example, we have a group of people, we have counselors, we have psychotherapists, we have managers, we have quality school teachers, you know, different types and kinds of people. So in our country, we have, you know, we have people, they are teachers, or they are, you know, ordinary, you know, managers, and they have a diploma of reality therapy. And they say, we are, you know, licensed in reality therapy. So I think if we are going to answer this question, it's good to see where we are heading in the next 5 years. So that could be, you know, helpful to see what should be on the certificates.
Thank you. And we'll go to Sue now.
Sorry, I'm chewing. Okay.
Do you want me to go to Maggie
no,
first
I
and
got
come
it.
back to you? You're okay?
I like the specialty idea. I'm uncomfortable with the idea that I think it's really all about being certified in choice theory, but the applications of choice theory are woven into the theory base itself. So in education, we'll tend to say theory into practice, and here's the practice piece. Part of my discomfort is if we are going to say CT, or if we go the whole route, CT, RT, LM, I would want to see quality schools added after that as well, which then I think becomes way more cumbersome, you know. And we had this conversation also for GIFT's program committee. People were all about, you know, is it choice theory? Is it reality therapy? What are we talking about? And it went on and on and on. We were able to get ourselves out of that for the venue that we were looking at. But for this, in terms of certification, I think it's choice theory and all its applications, as opposed to everything. In our area, we didn't have a difficult time using reality therapy. We didn't have a difficult time with that, but there are areas in which teachers would not want to, they don't do therapy. I'm not a counselor, I'm not doing therapy. People in my area didn't have a hard time with it, but people across the country did. So I guess it's either all four or it's just CT with applications in, and then the 4 areas. Well, the 3 areas.
Thank you. My concern about using all the applications is that if somebody went to ask you, okay, well, tell me this, tell me this, tell me this, tell me this, that could be pretty dicey because you don't really know what are all the applications, all 4 of those categories.
Yeah.
Are you really
Yeah.
competent So it's really a challenge, but thank you, Sue. Maggie, we'll go down to you and Chris.
Thanks, Pat, and thank you everybody for your contributions. Certainly set me thinking, and what I'm thinking at the moment is we're focusing an awful lot on making sure that each level is licensed or whatever it turns out to be. But Dr. Glass's vision was actually teach the world choice theory. And over the years, many of the people that I teach are not teachers. Many of the people are not in businesses, or they have a small business. I think we've got to be careful of that, because one of the things that I'm very particular about, and my own organization can vouch for that, the level of questioning that comes with in applications is reality therapy. It's a reality therapy process or technique of questioning. And if you don't learn that to get deep dives on each of the concepts, then what's the point of going on? If you're not competent in learning questioning by the time you've got to some sort of competence by the time you get to advanced week, then it's losing its point to me to then say, well, you're competent in choice theory. But choice theory, we can't live choice theory without questioning. And the questioning has to be from ourselves. And people have to be taught how to question from themselves. And I think we're separating processes here that need to be much more integrated and hand in hand for each of these levels you're specifying as you go through. And don't forget the little people, the mums and dads who just want some help to be able to question their children in a non-adversarial way and to maintain the connecting habits with them, but also have a thing that will give them what they see as effective control as a parent and gaining more effective control. So don't let us lose teach the world choice theory in becoming so focused on academic levels. That's just my perception.
Thank you, Maggie. We'll go to.
I think as
I'm
they
sorry.
can understand a little bit of each, there's nothing wrong with the labels. They're going with them, but each of these labels would have a competency level. Thanks.
I think the competency piece is really what we're looking forward to down the road. Jim and then Kim, and I think then unless somebody else has something we haven't said already, we're kind of running up on 20 minutes on this topic, but I don't want to cut anybody off. So Jim, did you want to contribute something else?
Yeah, is there room for flexibility, or is this the only options we have? I mean, could we literally put in policy or guideline that, depending on the agency, they can have it listed on their certificate how they choose?
Okay, so that's a good segue to Kim. So Kim, there's a question you might have an answer to, and you have your hand up for your own contribution.
I love choice. You have to know. So I like that idea. That's not something that we've discussed. So I can't really speak to that as far as, is it possible? Isn't it possible? I think we're looking, well, what I wanted to say was really about what we talked about this morning, which was forward thinking to when we do get to competency based. And Maggie, to allay your concern, we were talking about having a generalized kind of a self-growth certificate for people like parents or couples who are trying to relate better to one another, and they don't need to know what the chart looks like, and they just get what the information that they need for their specific piece. We did talk about that, and then it wouldn't necessarily be choice theory reality therapy certification. It would be maybe a completion of parenting or a completion of relationships. And we talked about having specific, oh, hold on 1 minute. The reason that I put my hand up was to tell you I have somebody coming to fix my internet, and he's here. So I'm going to turn my camera off and get him back where he needs to be. And I'll come back when I'm
Okay, so while Kim is stepping aside, I wonder if anybody has anything further that you wanted to talk about with this particular topic.
But I think Kim is right. I'm sorry, other people had their hand up. I apologize. I didn't mean to just. butt in.
Okay, we'll go to Sharon then.
Okay,
And
this
we'll
is-
come back to you if we have time, Jim. Go ahead.
This is really quick. The Quality School Committee has talked at different times that people would take a basic week, mixed career people, and then we would more or less develop a track for educators where they would take their advanced and their then certification, where you would still be exposed to all areas, but a strong emphasis on education and education use. So we hadn't quite said that, but I think that's another consideration as we go towards competencies. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, Jim?
I would just agree with what Kim had said. And that's why I think that this idea of just having certificates available for the training process. I've since I was 14, I did my first workshop in 4th grade. And I've never seen a workshop that didn't give certificates. I mean, it's that old adage. I think I mentioned it to Wendell the other day about and Bob Wolding uses this, where if I have enough ribbons, I can win any war. Napoleon, and those are our ribbons. And people in horse shows don't go to a horse show without coming away without a ribbon. Just in so many areas, even if it's a ribbon of participation, and I think that that's really important. So, okay.
I think that
we need to consider that at some point.
Yeah, well, I think that you're absolutely correct in that, and that we need to understand what does certification mean. Because very often, and I think this is true of our programs, is that it tends to be how many hours you put in. And this is why we're moving toward that competence base, because it's not necessary. It's just about going through the steps at this point with growth over time. But how do you measure competence? And, and what does a certificate say? Because most of the time certificates just reflect that you've completed a 40-hour study in this program or whatever. So that's what happens in the workshops, right? So thank you for that. And I see that Kim is back. May all of your internet problems be resolved. Oh.
I hope so.
So we were just chatting a little bit more. You can watch the video if you want. But we were kind of repeating some things. And so we can move on to the next item if you're ready.
Yeah. So the next item is simply, WGI had approved for instructors to use Zoom to deliver their training during COVID, but we didn't say it could go on indefinitely. It was just during COVID. But since everybody has become so adept at using Zoom, the question has been raised, should it continue to be an option? So that's the question on the table. Yes, Jim.
Yes, I have a thought on that. I think that. All right, I have to laugh at myself too. Well, when I got in the field, it was 1992, and I gave somebody my cell phone number or my telephone number. We didn't have cell phones, a telephone number, and everybody thought that was the strangest thing. And I almost got in trouble with St. Joe's Hospital, and I had already been doing it for years, and the professional counselors where I was from, of course, there were no licensures at that time, but the professional counselors where I was from, it was all the time. I mean, if a young kid, teenager was suicidal, you didn't want them not having a phone number. And that's all we had. We didn't have a national number or anything like that. I've always been comfortable with that. I don't see why we've ever, when the technology came along, I don't see why we were so hesitant to learn how to use it. And we're pretty competent at using it. I do see some drawbacks. I think that it would be nice if people made an effort to at least have a day of face-to-face contact and then a day or of Zoom or something if you're in trainings. But again, that flexibility factor might come into play there. And we could always make the suggestion, a strong suggestion, that it be done whenever possible, be done face-to-face. But I don't think we should exclude Zoom. I think, in the future, as we start to do more marketing and stuff, we're going to get a lot of business out of that.
Thank you, Jim. And my laughter was really a laughter of recognition, because that's how I feel all the time. I got a thought. So that was what I was laughing about. And I think we all appreciate everybody's contribution. So no hesitation there. Anyone else? I don't see any other hands up.
Wendell, it's written all over your face.
Oh, is that what that is? I thought it was chocolate.
Hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. Is that what he's trying to say?
So, okay, Sue has her hand up. So Sue, let's go to you.
Sorry, I was like, I got the clap, I got everything in there. It's like, which reaction am I going for? Oh, it's got hands. I was just clicking, I don't know. I think Zoom is useful. I would say, however, I think we want to be more savvy as to some of the Zoom courses are perhaps not of adequate quality without the face-to-face, that it becomes sort of a, when it's a multiple choice, answer the questions, and without interaction, if the role play can be done on Zoom just as well as it can be done face to face. I mean, I guess I'm not used to seeing people, so it's okay. You're 2-dimensional instead of 3. I guess that's fine. I would say just we need to be cautious in terms of what the capacity is and what the actual skill level and competence, what it actually looks like on Zoom, to get it to be as well constructed as when it's live.
That was a lot about what was talked about this morning as well. Judith? Judith, you had your hand up. Did you want to add something?
I did. I agree with Sue. I had my hand up and then I heard what she said, and it's like, yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you so
You
much.
just really need to, I'm one of the role play instructors. So Sharon, Mona, Kim with the Gift US program. And there are some people that when they come into the role plays, that they did not really get the information. And at this point, I don't think that program or the one that the Trichettes put out have that kind of what does it say? Competence, quality assurance, whatever.
Thank you. Kim?
So I want to say 2 things. First, I want to say that Amir is here with me on the phone. He's on speakerphone because he can't get into the Zoom room. So he's going to participate in this way. And if he has something to say, he'll tell me and then I'll let you know. And what I wanted to say is, Judith, we're talking about something different than that program. So for example,
I went to 14, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, what?
I said, I was looking at 14, question 14.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And
we're talking about just doing what you normally do in an in-person training, just doing it on Zoom so that you're there 100% of the time. We had a lot of positive thoughts for allowing that to happen this morning. I'm in favor of it happening. I can just share for myself. I have a group counseling practice in New York City, and they want to learn reality therapy and choice theory, but they want to do it on Fridays instead of 4 days during the week, because in a counseling practice, if you don't do the counseling, you're not getting paid. So to do a 4-day training, not only are they paying for training, but they're losing their income for the week. So to do it every Friday, it makes so much sense for them, and it makes no sense to fly me from Chicago to New York City once a week to teach them training. We did it on Zoom and it worked out pretty darn well. But if we continue to do Zoom training, we talked about having maybe some faculty training on how to do good Zoom training and yeah, okay, Wendell, I see you're in favor of that, how to use the tools that we have for Zoom. So that's something that would be included if we do continue with Zoom. Okay, that's all I had to say, and I see Jim has his hand up.
I would just add too, as I was listening to Kim, it kind of came to me that if we don't use the technology and we're not practiced at it and we're not honed on it as an institute, we might fall behind pretty easily. And the other thing I wanted to say, Kim, if they would like me to fly, if they or you would like me to fly to New York City, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, same here.
What a guy.
Yeah.
They're not even flying me to New York City, Jim.
Okay, so I'm just keeping track of time. So can we? Oh, Wendell, I see you have something to add, and then if we've covered enough, then we can move forward. Go ahead, Wendell.
What's the synchronistic? Why is that word in there? Is that something different?
Yeah, so Wendell, on the way that they differentiate online training, it's synchronistic if a teacher has to be present. It's asynchronistic if you can work through it without the teacher present. So the US program that we have online, part of it is asynchronistic. You get a narrated PowerPoint, you can do it at your own time. And synchronistic are the role play sessions where you have to be with a live person. So that's just a distinction. Came about during COVID times, probably was around before then, but the world kind of became more aware of it then.
Good question, Wendell. Thank you very much. Didn't pick up on that and didn't know that. And thank you, Kim.
Oh, you're welcome. So we're skipping 14 because we realized it doesn't belong on the list. This is something that already is approved by WGI. We do offer 3 actually different hybrid training methods that has an asynchronistic information piece, which is narrated PowerPoint in most of these programs, and then real-time role play sessions. So that has been approved, and we've put a lot of people through that program. It's just the basic. We're not going to get to a place where we do all of an advanced training or certification training in a asynchronistic fashion. That just isn't going to work. But we do offer the basic in Canada, and we have 2 in the United States. So the next one is probably the most.
Kim, excuse me, I have to step away for a minute, so I'll turn this back over to you and go off screen for a minute. Okay.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
I'll be right back.
Let me just check in with Amir. Amir, do you have anything you want to say?
No, I'm okay here.
Okay. All right. So the next one might be the most controversial of all. I don't know. But the current policy that we have says that it is required that people in training have 5 different instructors during the certification process. So they would have a different person for basic intensive, basic practicum, advanced intensive, advanced practicum, and certification. That's what's recommended. But what's required is that you have at least 3 different people, and they want you to have someone different for basic, intensive, advanced intensive, and certification. This was the other thing that Linda Harshman told me never to do. Never give exceptions to this 3 instructor rule. That was those 2 things that she told me to do, and I followed them as as best I have always followed them because I had the utmost respect for Linda. what the training committee is asking, we don't want to change 3 different faculty members, and we would like to keep it, the recommendation being that you have 5 different people. What we do want to do is to say that you can have those 3 different instructors at any phase of the training. So technically, let's say Wendell picks up a person in basic training and they want to work with him in basic practicum, and they want to work with him in advanced training. They can do that. But once they get to advanced practicum, they have to have someone different, and they can't have Wendell for certification, so that they would have 3 different faculty members. And just for those of you who don't understand why that's a rule, I think most people do, but there are people who have their own business and feel like, if I put the money into the advertising and I get these people, why do I have to give my work business away? And the answer to that is, if you have a person that only trains with you, then they become a mini-me. And we're not trying to do that. We want people to have a well-rounded education where they're being exposed to lots of faculty. And, you know, we want them to be able to find faculty that they resonate with. And yeah, if you're the first person that they've encountered in the way that we teach, I'm sure that they're going to love you to death. They will never find out if there's somebody that's more like them out there, if they don't get the opportunity to see some other people. So the question is, can we change the current policy to move it from, you must have somebody different for basic, advanced, and cert, and just say you need to have 3 different instructors during at least 3 phases of your training, and we're recommending that you have 5. So Wendell.
A question like this would only come up if people found problems with the current policy and expressed concerns. What have you heard on that?
Oh, there's been a lot of pushback on this. Oh my gosh, a lot. And I stand firm in what the policy says, but we're hoping that maybe a little flexibility in being able to offer, you can have the same person for 3 phases, and you and the person can choose what 3. It doesn't have to be a different person for basic, a different person for advanced, and a different person for cert. But some of the things that I've heard is, which is really not applicable anymore, but people still use it. Oh, I'm the only person within 500 miles. So if they're gonna, you know, they have to come to me, there's nobody else. But now with Zoom, they could go to anywhere and not leave their living room. So that's been one. Money, finances, I marketed, I spent all this money to get these people, they come to my training, and now I have to give that work away to somebody else. Those are the kind of things that I've heard on the other side. On the other side, I can tell you that I had a company hire me, and they begged me to do 3 segments because of relationship. And, you know, they kind of used our teaching against us and say, you know, if relationship is so important and you're teaching about that, and you build the relationship in basic training and then give them to someone else, that kind of defeats the purpose of relationships. So anyway, that's the backstory. So Judith, you have your hand up first.
James can go first. I can talk after him.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, what was I thinking? Helen, I think it was Helen that was on earlier today. Or Ellen, not Helen, Ellen. And she had a nice example, I thought, about if we use somebody 3 times or more than 3 times, that we show some evidence perhaps of having some influence from other instructors, or so maybe having some other instructors come in as guests and things like that, or even using videos of other people. So when I went through my cert process, I would have liked to have been introduced to Wendell as an instructor. I think that would have been a good thing. Wendell ended up a mentor of mine from the beginning, but I don't know that I actually had you for intensive week. I don't think I did, Wendell. And, you know, Wendell and I did some trainings together after that, after I became certified and everything. And I really wished I had had some of that influence. So it seems to me that your point is well made, Kim. We don't want people to just grab onto one person, but at the same time, I also had some bad experiences. So yeah, I know, Wendell. And I also, so again, I wonder if there isn't some middle ground that when you do have that relationship, that we still have some accountability for introducing some other styles and things of that sort, because not everybody in our group was going to have the same style that the instructor does, and we might click with 2 or 3 people, but maybe not all 10 or 12 or whatever, you know. But so is this the proper place, or is this an opportune time for a little discussion on potential options for that? Or
Yeah, I mean, this is what we're looking for is options for sure. We were not thinking as the training committee that we wanted to change the 3-person guideline or rule. But we did want to make it more flexible in terms of when you could have those people. But you're suggesting maybe that we make it okay that they do use the same person throughout.
Yeah, I think, you know, it wouldn't hurt just to have some written material on that to give to the faculty to explain in maybe some circumstances in which it might be more appropriate than other circumstances. And then just to emphasize the point that I really think your point is well made, Kim, that we need to be aware of these other styles. You know, I enjoyed the heck out of Dr. Wobbelding's training the first time I saw him and all that. But I was very glad to see other people too. And, you know, Al was wonderful. But I was never aware of Wendell. So, you know, maybe having some short videos of a variety of any faculty that wants to have a short video, they could produce their own or something else. But I mean, we could certainly have a spot where you could introduce trainers on the web. They could, you know, tune in and see Wendell doing a 5-minute spot and Sharon doing a 5-minute spot and yourself, Kim, and so forth, you know, something like that. But and then have something in the literature that, you know, if Wendell's doing a thing that he invites me in for, and I think like in the last one he did, he invited me in to do some be present virtually. And I think I made a couple of example comments and stuff like that. And I felt good about contributing. I felt valued. Certainly felt like, you know, our relationship was getting stronger. That I thought that flavored that for the students, certainly. But I also recognized that when Wendell's building those relationships, it does a couple of things. One, as a staff member, I think it's always going to challenge us. And I think how do we maintain, is an instructor good enough at what we do to maintain a relationship long-term? And we haven't done that. We have not we haven't had IBM calling us back year after year. We haven't had even, you know, businesses from Corning, New York calling us back year after year after all the effort and stuff we put in there. And that tells us something about those long-term relationships that we haven't quite caught on to. So I think your point, Kim, again, is, you know, well made. So we have to consider that, I think, that if we're going to have long-term relationships as an institute and have that money coming in long-term and be able to have like at our conferences, these tables that cost $10,000 and stuff like that, then we want a long-term relationship with those companies so that they're willing to put that kind of money in. Does that make sense? But it's going to challenge our staff, because I don't think our staff is used to thinking in that perspective of long-term for 10, 20-year relationship with this company. And how do I do that? How do I keep that customer coming back? And how do I stay renewed in this information? How do I set some of my old stuff back there and I keep growing as an instructor so that I can do more with that business and so forth. But am I making that point clear? Is that, I don't know if I'm saying
Yeah,
that well.
no, that makes sense.
Okay. So
I
this is,
see that. Sorry, Jim, do you want to
no, go
finish your
ahead.
sentence?
Feel free, go ahead, yeah.
I just see that Wendell's got his hand up, but if you were finished there, Jim.
Yeah,
Okay.
I rambled
Wendell?
enough. Thank you.
I can readily support number 15. The kind of broadening the flexibility on the variety is to me a given, you know, the benefit of that. But because we've got limited training and availability and one thing or another, I would strongly support this number 15. I had good results last June when I did a CERT week, and I was able to get Carlene Glasser to come on and be with our group for 30 or 40 minutes. I caught Kim and Pat in their car going somewhere for 10 minutes. But and people appreciate it. Wow, this is the executive director, you know, and that sort of thing. And then Mona Duncan came on and talked about a couple of the Zoom programs, and people really liked that. And now then, of course, I had to scramble to try to make up to figure out how to cover everything else I wanted to. But on the one hand, I think it really enriched the presence, and people got a sense of something bigger than just a little bit too. So.
Okay, thanks, Wendell. Judith?
Yeah, so one of the reasons that we're looking at the variety is that's something that I remember Glasser talking about. The importance of people involved in the training having exposure to a wide variety of people, because that would assist them in understanding how widely useful this is, et cetera, et cetera. And I certainly, in the 80s, we had, I'll just refer to them as turf wars, in terms of people doing trainings and all of that kind of thing. So it comes, for me, it comes back to the training of the faculty and what we do on faculty day and faculty meetings and that type of thing in terms of the importance. Why is this important? We can have, I mean, we have 17 points here, questions. Why are these even important to talk about? And to me, it comes back to what is our mission, the quality of the work that we're doing, and staying true to, you know, what Bill talked about, what he taught all of us, those who were able to work directly with him. And so there's a variety of ways to have people interact with other faculty, with other people in other areas of the training process, all kinds of things. But to me, it comes back to why. If we're getting pushback, then from people saying, but I did all of this, why should I? Then why should they? What is our answer to that? And when we have, but I like you and I shouldn't have to go like somebody else. What is our answer to that? What do we say? I mean, I sit down with people at the end of the trainings, and we look at who the basic and advanced practicum supervisors are, both in person in their area and online. So I'm just.
Thank you. We'll go to Sharon.
Okay, just a quick question, comment that this was down, way back down into my instructor training. And one time I walked into that level, which is different from what we're talking about, but the instructor looked at me and said, Sharon, what more do I have to teach you? I had her in several different levels, right? And I don't know that on the 3 lower courses, if that is a different or not, but I really think it stretches us to be maybe a little uncomfortable with somebody else because we need to be able to adapt to different styles because we are going to be with all kinds of different people and different walks of lives and type of thing. So I would prefer it stay as it is today, but I will not vote down if we go the other way. So that's all.
Thank you. I'm looking at, Jim just posted something in the chat, agreeing with Judith, and he says, we've always had the open invitation as a staff member to attend the trainings of with other staff.
Right.
So, yep. I would like to say just a couple of comments and then I have to leave because I'm teaching a class tonight at the university. So first of all, I think that idea that Jim had about instructors having the option of putting up like a couple-minute video, 2 or 3 minutes, is about all people want to watch on a video these days, but introducing yourselves if you'd be interested in doing that kind of thing. And then the other way to meet new instructors or different instructors is through the conferences, that when we go around and we take advantage of those kind of options. And maybe what we could also do is look at having conferences, not just in face-to-face, but maybe providing Zoom access or virtual access to some of the presentations so that people can share without having to travel so much. So that might be another option. And then finally, Jim was talking about what sustains people's connection and the importance of relationship. And this is really off topic, but I'm just going to say this, is that I think that down the road somewhere would also be good to talk about, are we offering people what they want from our trainings? And there's, we're doing the things that we've been doing for a long time, but I will tell you that I went to a school that was a quality school, and I asked them, what's your connection to the Institute? And they had no interest in being connected to the Institute. They wanted to know what they could do in their classrooms, and then they were done. And so there wasn't that relationship, but also they didn't need what we were giving them anymore. They needed something else. And school systems, I think, are a good example of that when the superintendent changes and now the focus changes. So really, I think we need to keep the pulse on what people are searching for, what kind of things that they want to be trained on, in addition to the intensive trainings that we have already. And with that, I have to say goodbye because my students are going to be knocking at the next door on my Zoom. And so good to see everybody. Love you. It's just so wonderful to be part of the team always. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. So
Thanks,
we are
Pat.
at the end of our time, but we only have 2 more things. And the last thing really, we don't have to discuss much on. Jim, are you trying to show us something? You want to show it?
Yeah, I keep coming back to this paper that I forget her name, Lynn Sumida?
Sumida.
Sumida? Okay. I can't read it at the bottom here. It's kind of faded out, but the 3 levels of competency that she reiterated and did a nice job with. I just thought that that has a significance probably to our discussion in regards to coming up with competencies for the different levels. If we do use the same people and we have people coming in, we need to have that structure. So.
Right. And for those of you who don't know, we do have a list of competencies at the WGI website for each level of certification. Not everyone uses them. Not everybody even knows about them, but they are there. It has been sent out to people, and we understand that they could be better. And that's what we want to do. We want to work at creating have a robust training committee with people from all member organizations contributing to create the competencies that we're going to feel good about. And so that's our goal, and that's why I think it's going to take some time. The next thing, I'll just do this quick, and we don't even have to discuss. We can just say what you think, or we can just put it on the SurveyMonkey survey. But our current policy says that there will be 10 people, no more than 10 people in a certification training. And that made a lot of sense when we had Dr. Glasser coming in and doing role plays, and we had Bob Wobelding coming in and doing role plays, and we had an ethics presentation, and none of those things happen in certification anymore. So we realized that we can have more people in certification groups than just 10. And I know for sure that the highest number we want to have is 14. We did that once in the United States in Vegas with Bruce Allen, and Bruce is quite a experienced faculty member, and he said if there were more than 14, he would never have been able to get done, and he just barely got done at 14. So we put down options 10, 12, 14 and see what that says. I think that we're leaning in the direction of 12 with exceptions for up to 14. If maybe, let's say we had 26 people going to certification, rather than having 3 different groups, we might have 13 in each group, but that kind of thing. So if anybody has any burning thing they want to say about the number of people in certification, you can do that. Do that now. I'll hear what you have to say. I don't think it's like, this isn't a real controversial thing. Okay. And the last question, this is how we resolved it in the morning. So I'll say what we said in the morning, and if anybody has anything more they want to say, then you can feel free to do that. But there was something happened in the United States where we had some instructors doing 3-day trainings that were 21 hours in length, and the rest of us were doing 4-day trainings that were 27 hours in length. The amount of money you paid for the training was the same, and you got the same certificate. And I can tell you, as the executive director, I was asked questions by consumers who didn't understand that. And I know why they didn't understand it, because it didn't make any sense to me. I mean, if you're doing a 21-hour, 3-day training, it should cost less than a 4-day, 27-hour training, and you shouldn't get the same certificate. But that's what we were doing. So when we made the change to the training policy back, I think it was in 2016, we changed the amount of hours to 24. Now, this is going to be a moot issue because we're not going to be looking at the amount of hours anymore. That is not competency-based training. But we changed it to 24 hours is the minimum, and that was whether you did a 3 or 4-day training. So it really doesn't matter whether you're doing 3 or 4 days. And we find in Asian countries, an 8-hour training day is nothing for them to sit through. It is very comfortable. It's not like in the US, if you do more than 6 hours, people are blurry-eyed and they can't concentrate. It's not the same thing in Asian countries. I don't know about other places, but I know that they do 10-hour training days and don't really blink an eye about that. So that's where we left it with 17. So I'm going to just give you guys the opportunity if you have something to say. I see Maggie has her hand up. So Maggie and Chris. You're muted, Maggie. We can't hear you.
Sorry, I was trying to find my little hand for the Cert Week ones. And
okay, go back.
So I just want to go back to that one before we go to the other one. But sure. I just found that once you got to 12 in Cert Week for a lot of people is a very special time in the program, I found. And for me, to tell somebody that they had 15 minutes to present their learning after putting a lot of time, maybe sometimes up to 18 months into getting to that stage for them, I found it was sort of disrespectful. And therefore, the numbers to me in Cert Week are important. And definitely, I agree with Al Katz on that 14 is far too many. And even 13, I find that these 12 people are not getting respectful time. Unless the instructor is very, very strict about that. And some people will go over. So I just want to think about 12 in a Cert Week as a maximum, because it is a very special time for people. And I think they should have that time to mull over that training, the celebration that they're at with that, and to be able to spend the time, validating their own input over that time. So the numbers, I like 12 maximum there. I just want to put that forward. Thanks.
And I'm glad that you said that, because the people who aren't here that want to fill out the Survey Monkey, we ask them to listen to our meetings so they can hear everybody's points before they vote, because information changes people's minds. We know that. So we want them to hear the information from people that were here. So thanks for that, Maggie. Anybody have anything they would like to say about 16 or 17? I'm happy to hear it. And then if not
in Cert Week, definitely not for me.
Okay.
I would just say certificate. Give them a certificate every chance you get.
Yeah, actually, that was one of the things in our early meeting was, should people get certificates for practicum? And I think we're going in that direction. So most people voted a yes on that. Certificate of completion, Wendell, is that? I know, I recognize that certificate paper.
Well, I had a
if I may, right now I've come across a young woman. She's young to me, she's in her 50s, but she's a young woman who has just gone up through the ranks, getting every certificate possible for each level of training that company sent her to. Now that has taken her into a Master's of Counseling now, with no previous university qualifications, through recognition of prior learning. And I think when it goes to looking at certificates, Jim, these certificates were what actually got her into that master's degree. And I think that's important, because each company does have very specialized trainings for people sometimes in different companies, and they can go along to do that and save these up so that they do become qualified for recognition of prior learning. So I agree with Jim. The certificates, yeah. And we've always given certificates for practicum in Australia, always there.
Oh, good. Okay, Jim, and then I think we'll close this out. You guys are past your time, so I appreciate you for hanging in there.
Maggie, I'm appreciative of what you said there. I'm right with you on that. Just to give it a good example, when I returned to the Institute and decided to go further with the faculty training, I think the only thing I had to fall back on was that I had a certificate. Otherwise, it had been so long, nobody had any record, nobody remembered.
Well, part of that for me also was attending all conferences, all 23 years of them, coming back with a CPD certificate from the US, because the association here would not recognize reality therapy. So that was my only way that I could validate what I had done and to the level that I had gone here.
Okay, excellent. Wendell.
I had a practicum student recently that had gone to Wobbling's training in the last year sometime, and then she after, as we were wrapping up, she said, "Well, do I get a certificate?" And I said, "Oh, well," and I needed to check to see if there had been any change. And then I said, "Well, there wasn't any for the practicum." she said, well, can I get something from you? So it challenged me to come up with something. And so I as you said, I got a certificate and I had to learn how to fit it out on the word processing. And I was really proud of doing this. And she was happy as could be, you know, and I said,
Yeah.
completed the basic practicum with gifts, this second of 5 phases. Study included this, and this, choice of the mail and role play, blah, blah, blah. And so I was really pleased with that. And I would support the idea of a certificate for the practicums. Also, one final thing, Jim Soder and I have been connected for a long time. Jim, my esteem of you, I always guessed your IQ to be about 103, but I bumped that way up to maybe like 107 because
Thank you, Wendell. I appreciate that.
You know, and not that I haven't on anybody else, but that was, I thought it was genius, your thing about a little 5-minute video from all faculty people that would be sent and available at their website. And I could picture this. I'm doing a practicum with people or somebody, and I say, between now and the time I get next, I'd like you to go on the website and look at a couple of those 5-minute things from Susan Fleming and from Christine and from Amir, and come back and share with the group. They'll highlight it. It would be just an expansive thing of people being exposed to all of these others. Anyway, that was genius. So maybe even 110 or 111.
Marty. Hi, Marty.
I'm getting close to average.
Yeah.
Marty, we're just getting ready to say goodbye. You must have figured your time wrong.
Oh,
Or you figured it just right.
He's early for the 7 o'clock.
Well, yeah.
You know, I just thought of something, Kim. You know, I've been doing the suicide prevention workshops a long time. And I could give a lot of examples of people saying I didn't have enough time to organize something and get people in. I've never had a problem on universities getting people in, even in a few days. If you go to a university and you put on a sign, and my sign is usually, you can save a friend. And then I go into the, you know, what it's about, the suicide prevention. And there's always a nice line on there about you'll get a certificate. And when I talk to all these people over the years of what brought them in, I mean, they're interested in the subject and all that, but what really catches their attention as college students is getting a certificate. They put it on their resume, they're going to graduate school, they're going to go get a job, they're going to, you know, all that stuff, anything extra they can get. So it just goes a long way that, you know, less than 5 cents to print that thing out, and entices them to look further into the institute, you know. So.
Yeah. Yep. Well, everybody, I want to thank you. Thank you for hanging in here. And it looks like we're done with this phase of the training, and we'll have one more survey, and then we'll get the policy written up and ready to go. What is that, Wendell?
It's Kim.
That is my name.
Is it backwards?
No, it's there. Thank you. Thank you to all of you. And
wow.
Will you be putting the meeting on video? I mean, on the
yeah
on the website.
We'll have it.
Then
You can watch it.
right.
Watch what you missed.
See what I missed. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And I look forward to seeing you another time. We'll have a new PD probably. What month is this? March. We'll probably have another PD in May. We're going to give you a break, and maybe we'll talk about Zoom and doing training on Zoom. I don't know. We don't have a particular topic or a person yet, but we might just do Zoom best practices and have people come who have something to say about what they do on Zoom. I don't know.
Okay.
Sharon, did you want to say something?
I just thought of this, our conference in St. Louis this summer, there will be online attendance available all 3 days or even partial. So do take take advantage of that. We want you there. Much hope to see people, but if you can't, it will be available.
So one of the deadlines is what, the 31st of this month?
I think it's,
There's so many different deadlines.
Then
I
the
need
fees
to
go
know.
up. I think it goes up after the 31st.
I
The-
think it's
to
April
attend
7th.
is- Yeah, it's
yeah,
April
I thought it
7th.
was in
April.
April.
April 7th for the first fees.
It might be the hotel is the end of this month, Marty.
Right.
I think it's to even June 9th, it goes out. I don't think
I
the
was thinking
fees
that-
change.
I thought I saw it says March 31st and then it goes up to 5 something after that.
It's for April 7th for the registration. The early bird is April 7th.
Right.
Is,
Okay.
is that the charge for on Zoom?
Oh, the early bird
No.
is April 7th?
Mm-hmm. Early bird is April 7th. You save $80 if you sign up then
Oh,
for the
what-
registration.
so we're talking about this summer in July.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Huh, I saw March 31st, it goes up to 5 something anyway.
Well,
Okay.
the training is discounted to April 30th, if you're talking about that. Then it goes up.
Okay.
That's April 30th.
I'll
Oh,
be-
sorry.
Maggie.
So is
All right,
there a
well, I hope,
cost, a separate cost for Zoom one?
Tim, do you hear me?
There's-
yes,
Yeah.
I do.
Go to the website. It's all on the website, Maggie. It's all right there.
You convey my goodbye to the people. Thank you so much.
Oh.
Amir's
Bye,
saying
Amir.
goodbye.
Thanks, Amir.
Bye,
Hey,
Amir.
They're-
Martin,
they're
thanks for
saying
making the
goodbye.
effort.
I will
Lovely.
talk to you later,
Thank you so
Maggie.
much.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
okay, I'll Zoom you now. Okay.
Martin,
Bye.
Okay,
Martin,
Marty.
thanks for making the effort to get here. It's
Sure.
hard when circumstances don't allow you to be on time and you always want to hum and haw and, oh, I'm going to be late kind of stuff, but thanks for being here. You shed
I
some
did it.
light.
I have a major crisis going on right now, so,
Sorry to hear that, but
yeah, so,
Take care.
appreciate you being
Okay,
here.
Marty. Take care.
okay, all righty. Thank you.
Bye,
See you,
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Kim, so much. Yeah.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank-